Chapter 67. Jinjin felt as though he was on fire. After leaving the cave, he took the initiative to kill the scorpions and killed 3 of them. The silver spear scorpion was provoked and was enraged. It led the scorpions to surround Jinjin. Previously, Jinjin took the initiative to break the agreement. This caused the scorpions to no longer follow the rules. All the spear scorpions attacked Jinjin alone. Jinjin dodged left and right, climbing the mountain rock. His movements were agile and nimble. The mountainous terrain was very unfriendly to the scorpions. Ordinary spear scorpions' movements were greatly hindered. Only the silver spear scorpions could catch up to Jinjin. Jinjin fought with them. Every time, he mainly defended. After a few attacks, he saw that the scorpions were about to surround him again, so he continued to retreat. Good, that's it. Although Jinjin was under a lot of pressure, he was happy. This was because the situation in front of him was what he wanted the most. The entire scorpions were attracted to him. This way, Zd and Sangsu could escape quietly. Stall for time. The longer we stall for time, the higher the chances of them escaping. However, good things did not last long. Jinjin's movements quickly became slow. He was panting. Although he was full of fighting spirit, his limbs were weak and he could not exert any strength. In the craggy mountain rocks, he had just dodged a stab from a scorpion's tail. Another spear scorpion appeared behind him and waved its pincer legs. Jinjin wanted to dodge, but because he did not have enough strength, his movements were slow. With a loud bang, Jinjin was sent flying by the spear scorpion's pincer legs. Jinjin's back hit a huge rock. He spat out a mouthful of blood and almost fell down. Just as he landed, 3 spear scorpions surrounded him. Jinjin bent his waist and rolled to avoid the pincer legs. He then jumped up and stepped on the head of a spear scorpion and climbed up the huge rock. Just as he was leaping into the air, the silver spear scorpion arrived. Its sharp tail pierced through the air and attacked Jinjin. Jinjin heard the sound of the wind and turned around with difficulty in midair, using the spider blade to block. The scorpion tail pierced the spider blade, bringing about a huge impact. Jinjin was about to use this force to rise to the top of the boulder, but at the moment of impact, he saw the cracks on the spider blade rapidly spreading. Shit! Jinjin's pupils shrank. Just as he realized that something was wrong, the entire spider blade shattered with a bang. Without any obstruction, the scorpion tail pierced through Jinjin's left shoulder and collarbone. Furthermore, its momentum did not diminish as it nailed Jinjin to the boulder. Jinjin cried out in pain and spat out a large mouthful of blood. He grabbed the tip of the scorpion tail spear with both hands and tried his best to pull it out. However, the strength of the silver spear scorpion was not something he could compare to. No matter how hard Jinjin gritted his teeth and tried his best, he could not move the tip of the scorpion tail spear an inch higher. For a moment, Jinjin could not move. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the silver spear scorpion used all its limbs to climb up the boulder. However, the boulder was steep and the walls were smooth. It was simply straight up and down. The silver spear scorpion stuck its body to the boulder and almost stood up, but its pincer legs could not reach Jinjin. The scorpion tail was very long, so it was able to pierce Jinjin and nail him to the boulder. However, the spear scorpion could not climb the boulder and its pincers could not reach Jinjin. It could not give Jinjin a fatal blow. The battle entered a strange stalemate. Jinjin could not escape, and the silver spear scorpion could not kill Jinjin for the time being. Blood continuously flowed out from the wound on his left shoulder. It flowed along Jinjin's legs and dripped onto the silver spear scorpion's pincers and head. The silver spear scorpion tried for a while, but it could not reach Jinjin. It was so angry that it screeched, its voice sharp and ear-piercing. However, it seemed to be afraid that Jinjin would jump and escape again, so it did not move its tail away. It kept Jinjin firmly fixed to the boulder. The blood loss gradually increased, and Jinjin felt dizzy. He had used up all his strength. He was unarmed. The boulder was like an axe, and there was nothing on the surface that he could borrow strength from. Once the scorpion tail loosened, Zhenjin would fall down and be cut into pieces by the spear scorpion. I am going to die. Death had truly arrived. When Zhenjin realized this, fear engulfed his entire body. Brave. Do not be afraid. I am a Templar Knight. Even though he was shouting in his heart, there was still a strong sense of fear that continuously grew in his heart. It was like a tide, quickly drowning his soul. If death happened in an instant, he would not have time to think, and would not have such a strong sense of fear. But when death gradually approached, the huge pressure was not something he could imagine. Only when he experienced it personally would he know how terrifying it was. When he killed the brown monkey-tail bear in the cave, he felt fear when he woke up. But the fear he felt after escaping was not as strong as it was now. I also know that I will be afraid, but I never realized that I would be so afraid. Afraid. He was afraid of death. Then, because of the strong fear in his heart, Zhenjin felt ashamed and humiliated. Maybe I am a greedy person who is afraid of death. No, no. The young knight's heart was in pain. He realized that he was a greedy person who was afraid of death. To him, this was even more cruel than death. His blood quickly flowed into a pool, dyeing the entire head of the silver spear scorpion red. Zhenjin's vision gradually dimmed, and his strength was constantly fading. His struggle became weaker and weaker. Well, although I am dead, Zidi and Sangsu are still alive. He could almost see the scene of Zidi and Sangsu escaping from the cave. At this time, another sense of absurdity arose in Jin Zhen's heart. Those who are weaker than me can escape? I am stronger than them, and I am going to die? I wonder if they managed to save Baiya? This possibility is very small. If I had listened to Sangsu's advice and ate human flesh, maybe I could have been saved. As soon as this idea popped up, Zhenjin wanted to deny it. But the more he denied it, the stronger this thought became. Thus, the young knight felt regret. Extremely regret. If I die, will my soul be lucky enough to enter the Qingming Emperor's holy palace and become a heroic spirit? The possibility is too small. In here, I can't even pray to the Qingming Emperor. In other words, if I die, I will have nothing. My responsibilities, my family, my ambitions, and my future will all be gone. If I have to choose again, I will not be stubborn. I will eat. Why should I listen to the words of a person of the same age as me? Something like hell is at my feet, and I will fall immediately? Bullshit. I am so stupid. Other people's answers are not my answers. I thought about it for almost the entire night, but have I really thought about it? I want to live, I really want to live. I realize that living is more important than anything else. Even. What does the death of others have to do with me? I want to live. Huang Zhao also shouted the same words. I want to live. Brother, you are right. You are going to die anyway. If I sacrifice you, I can live. Don't blame me, don't blame me. It's all your fault. You are the one who is injured. Otherwise, how could we have run out of water so early? It's you. You are the one who killed my father and caused me to lose my father so early. You are the one who ate my mother. It's all your fault, all your fault. Huang Zhao screamed as he watched his brother, his only family member in this world, gradually stop breathing. After being stunned for a moment, he let go of his hand and buried his head in Lan Zhao's chest as he cried loudly. But at this moment, Lan Zhao suddenly opened his eyes. The muscles on his arms bulged, and his 10 fingers were like iron hooks as he firmly hooked Huang Zhao's head. Then, Lan Zhao quickly turned around and pressed Huang Zhao onto the sand as he sat on top of him. Huang Zhao's eyes widened, and his pupils shrank to the size of needles. He was unable to react to such a shocking change. He wanted to scream, but in the next moment, Lan Zhao's iron fist landed on his eye. For a moment, he felt as if the world was spinning and his ears were ringing. Huang Zhao subconsciously wanted to push his brother away. But his arm was caught by Lan Zhao and then his arm was broken. Lan Zhao's strength had strangely increased dramatically. It was simply beyond the limits of the human body. Ah! Huang Zhao screamed miserably. Bang bang bang! Lan Zhao swung his fists and beat Huang Zhao fiercely. He was like a powerful boxer beating up a weak punching bag. Huang Zhao was unable to resist at all. He was beaten until he vomited blood, and his teeth were all broken. Stop, stop! Spare me, I am about to die. Brother, brother, I won't do it again. Lan Zhao, I am your brother. Your biological brother. Brother, stop hitting me, stop hitting me. The frightened Huang Zhao could only loudly beg for mercy. But Lan Zhao didn't seem to hear him. He punched again and again, until Huang Zhao gradually stopped moving and struggling. Finally, Huang Zhao's arm fell limply to the ground. His eyes widened and his face changed beyond recognition. He was beaten to death by Lan Zhao. Bang bang bang! Lan Zhao was still continuing. His eyes lost focus, and his lips were tightly pursed, maintaining a deathly silence. His punching movements made him seem like a machine doing repetitive exercises. Zhenjin's vision gradually darkened. Before he died, his mind was abnormally active. But as his body gradually approached death, his mind became hazy. He was once again in the darkness. Boundless darkness. Where is this? Am I dead? Wait, who am I? Even though there was no point of reference in the darkness, the young man could feel himself sinking deeper and deeper. He had forgotten almost everything, but at this moment there was a huge sense of danger shrouding his heart. The youth realized that if he didn't do anything, he would be consigned to eternal damnation. But he didn't know what he should do, what he could do. What did I forget? What exactly did I forget? What should I remember? Damn it, who can answer me? The youth felt extremely powerless. It was as if he was in a nightmare. His mind was both clear and hazy. He realized that he was in a dangerous situation. He wanted to be completely awake, but he couldn't. This feeling of helplessness made him especially angry. And anger was like a spark that seemed to have triggered something. Roar! The roar of a wild beast suddenly came from the darkness. The roar was so mighty that it instantly shattered the entire dark space of consciousness. In reality, Zhenjin, who had closed his eyes, suddenly woke up. He opened his eyes wide, but his pupils had shrunk to the extreme. He opened his mouth as wide as possible and panted violently, like a person who had just been rescued from drowning. A ferocious and strange power was stirring in his heart. Blessed with inspiration, Zhenjin immediately activated this power. The power was like a ferocious tiger that had opened its gate and suddenly rushed out from his heart. Zhenjin's hand, which had already fallen to his waist, reached out again and grabbed the silver spear scorpion's scorpion tail tightly. The next moment, that ferocious and strange power surged into his palm, causing his hand to turn blood red. The blood-red light overflowed and turned into 4 lines of blood. Each line of blood was as thick as an adult's finger. The lines of blood were like poisonous snakes attacking. They quickly followed the scorpion's tail and spread to the silver spear scorpion's entire body. On the surface, the silver spear scorpion looked like it was tied up. But the silver spear scorpion didn't seem to feel anything. The lines of blood were dimming at a speed visible to the naked eye, as if they had seeped into the silver spear scorpion's body from the surface. But very quickly, the crisscrossing lines of blood quickly regained their previous luster. Wait a minute, the blood light seems to be more enchanting and brighter than before. Zhenjin squinted his eyes. Just as he noticed this change, all the lines of blood suddenly retracted. Almost in an instant, there was nothing left on the spear scorpion's body. The lines of blood converged into his palm and returned to their previous nature of power. But the scale of the power was obviously much more than before. The power flowed quickly in Zhen Jin's body, and converged into his heart. At this moment, Zhen Jin's consciousness also focused on his heart. Once again, he clearly saw the magic crystal in his heart. It is indeed the power produced by the magic crystal. Zhen Jin had just confirmed his guess. The spear-tipped scorpion's tail in his hand was like a weathered bone. With a bang, it cracked and turned into countless tiny pieces. Without support, Zhen Jin fell down along the stone wall. When his feet landed on the ground, the pieces of the silver spear scorpion crumbled again and turned into a pile of ashes. Their leader died in a strange battle. The spear scorpion shrank back, but Zhen Jin's legs were weak. He only stood for a moment before sitting down on the ground. The spear scorpions saw that Zhen Jin was weak and surrounded him again. Numerous scorpion tails swung and the sharp spear tips pierced towards Zhen Jin from all directions. Zhen Jin had nowhere to hide. At the critical moment of life and death, he subconsciously activated the magic crystal. His movements were skillful as if it was instinct. The magic crystal in his heart immediately burst out a bright red light. The blood light penetrated Zhen Jin's body from the inside out. Clang, clang, clang. The spear-tipped scorpion tail pierced Zhen Jin, but it did not pierce his skin. It only made a series of metal clashing sounds. At this moment, Zhen Jin's skin almost turned into a scorpion's shell. And it was a silver-level scorpion's shell. The scorpion's shell was tough and completely blocked all the stab from the scorpion tail. Then, the remaining blood light flowed down and poured into Zhen Jin's buttocks. Poochie. With a soft sound, Zhen Jin felt a sharp pain in his tailbone. A long scorpion tail shot out from his buttock. Zhen Jin changed his sitting position to a half-kneeling position and tried to move the scorpion tail. The end of the scorpion tail was like a sharp spear, like a poisonous snake coming out of its hole, piercing through a spear scorpion. A fatal blow. The spear scorpions were stunned. They could not understand how a human could grow the same shell and scorpion tail as they did. But Zhen Jin's performance was enough to prove his strength. After the scorpions realized this, they all turned around and fled. Zhen Jin did not chase after them. He was still half-kneeling on the ground. He was exhausted. Looking at the scorpion shell and long scorpion tail on his body, the young knight's shocked expression was still frozen on his face. I grew a shell. I even grew a tail. Yes, I can actually control the magic crystal. Chapter 68. Most importantly, I survived. I survived. The joy of surviving was so strong and moving that Zhen Jin subconsciously kept repeating this sentence. There was a time when Zhen Jin thought that he was dead for sure. Ever since Zhen Jin woke up, he had experienced this kind of near-death experience several times. The joy of surviving each time moved his entire body and mind. This time, it was especially strong. It was as if all his cells were jumping for joy. Huff, huff, Zhen Jin's heavy breathing gradually calmed down. The pain from the wound on his shoulder blade continued to attack him. The joy and happiness faded. The young man gritted his teeth, tore open the hem of his shirt, took out a strip of cloth, and bandaged it. The cloth used as a bandage covered the wound and immediately printed a red blood stain. Zhen Jin wrapped the cloth around his armpit, bit one end of the cloth with his teeth, and tied it tightly with his hands. A burst of intense pain caused his eyes to darken. The young man sucked in a breath of cold air and endured for a few seconds. Only then did the pain lessen slightly. He wiped the cold sweat on his forehead and panted continuously. After a long time, his eyes regained focus. The tail in front of his eyes attracted his gaze. This scorpion tail was like gold, shining with a metallic luster. Zhen Jin had suffered enough from this scorpion tail when he fought with it before. But now this scorpion tail was his. It was a very strange feeling. With a thought from Zhen Jin, the scorpion tail was straight and motionless like a bamboo pole. With another thought from Zhen Jin, the scorpion tail was bent into an S shape, and then like a wave, it continued to undulate. It was like an arm moving a finger. Although this is the first time I grew a tail, it feels as if this scorpion tail was originally a part of my body. Zhenjin reached out to touch the scorpion tail. The cold and hard feeling was transmitted to his heart. But the scorpion tail did not feel being touched. Zhenjin lowered his head and looked at his chest. There was a scorpion shell on his chest. The scorpion shell was like a layer of natural armor that tightly protected his body. Zhenjin touched the scorpion shell on his chest and felt the same coldness as when he touched the scorpion tail. Similarly, the scorpion shell on my chest doesn't feel touched either. But previously, when the scorpion shell protected me from the spear scorpion stab, I felt a clear impact. In other words, it wasn't as if he couldn't feel it. It's just that when you're caressing me like this, your strength is very light, so I can't feel it. People have many kinds of feelings. It mainly consisted of sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. Most beasts had shells, fur, feathers, and so on. Compared to these, the human body had sparse hair and delicate skin. Therefore, the human body's defense was very weak. But at the same time, human skin and the fine hairs on the surface of the body gave people a sharper sense of touch. Sometimes, when a mosquito landed, it would be quickly detected by people. A scorpion's sense of touch was weaker than a human's. However, the defensive capabilities brought about by the scorpion shell was completely incomparable to that of the human body. It was the scorpion shell that saved my life. Without the scorpion shell, his entire body would have been pierced by the spear scorpion's tail. Zhenjin tried to look inside himself again. It was very smooth. Or rather, without any hindrance, he once again saw the magic crystal in his heart. The magic crystal constantly flashed with a bloody light and continued to be consumed, silently supporting Zhenjin's current mutation. Zhenjin's eyes flashed as he tried to control the magic crystal to stop the current consumption. In the next moment, the magic crystal's radiance in his heart rapidly weakened. In less than a breath, it completely stopped. Without the support of this mysterious crystal, Zhenjin's scorpion shell and tail quickly turned black and then carbonized. Almost in the blink of an eye, the mutated tissues and organs turned into ashes and scattered on the ground. Immediately, a sense of weakness surged from the bottom of Zhenjin's heart. Zhenjin was very familiar with this feeling. Previously, when his hands mutated into bear claws, when his arms were no longer mutated, and when he took the vomiting potion. Zhenjin lowered his head and looked at his chest. The original scorpion shell had disappeared without a trace. What appeared in front of him was his perfect and healthy chest muscles. Of course, his chest muscles were not very big. I'm only 16 years old. I'm still developing. Zhenjin inspected his chest and did not notice any lingering negative changes. Then, he reached out and touched his buttocks. There was a hole in the pants that covered his buttocks. It was pierced by the scorpion tail that grew out. Zhenjin touched his tailbone. It was normal, just like before. Zhenjin quietly sighed in relief. He began to focus his attention on the magic crystal in his heart again. He found that the more he focused on this mysterious magic crystal, the clearer his perception of the magic crystal's situation became. When this perception became clear to a certain extent, Zhenjin could completely detect the remaining energy in the magic crystal. With the previous degree of change, if the duration of each change is the same, I can probably change twice more. Naturally, Zhenjin calculated the result. Moreover, his intuition told him that the result of this calculation was very accurate. After the mutation, I will become very powerful. But there is a limit to the number of mutations. It can't let me mutate endlessly. The fundamental reason is that the energy in the magic crystal is limited. Zhenjin's eyes flashed with a thoughtful light. It's not just limited in this aspect. There is another limitation. I can only transform into scorpion shell and scorpion tail. The scorpion's pincers could not be transformed. Wait, this is? Zhen Jin's perception went deeper and he had a new discovery. A flash of joy flashed across the young man's face, because he found that he could not only transform into the body parts of the scorpion, but also transform into the monkey-tail brown bear again. But the same limitation as the scorpion, he could only transform into bear claws and bear arms, but could not transform into the other organs of the monkey-tail brown bear. Apart from the monkey-tail brown bear, I can also transform into a poisonous fire bee? The discoveries came one after another. Following Zhen Jin's thoughts, the magic crystal in his heart was quickly activated by him. Zhen Jin was clear about the changes of the scorpion and the monkey-tail brown bear. The other mutations needed to be tried and experienced one by one. This bit of energy could not be saved. The poisonous fire bee's mutation immediately took place. Zhen Jin looked at the back of his hand. The back of his hand quickly turned black and yellow, covered with a layer of fluff. This was the fluff of the poisonous fire bee, similar to the stripes of a zebra, except that it was black and yellow. I can cover all the skin on my body with this layer of fluff. But if I do this, the consumption will be greater than before. Zhen Jin immediately stopped activating the magic crystal in his heart, and a similar scene happened again. The fluff of the poisonous fire bee quickly turned gray, then turned into a pile of fine carbon powder. Zhen Jin shook the back of his hand lightly, shaking off the layer of carbon powder, revealing normal skin that was exactly the same as before. Scorpion, monkey-tail brown bear, poisonous fire bee. I can also transform into a goat. However, this goat mutation could only turn Zhen Jin's meat into mutton. Compared to the previous mutations, the value was very low. Zhen Jin still gave it a try. The transformed mutton is not covered with the previous frost and chaos magic power. But this is normal. The reason why those goats contain it is because they ate the grass. Stopping the magic crystal in his heart, the transformed mutton quickly turned back to normal human meat. If I dig out the transformed mutton with a dagger, can it be used as food? I can eat myself. Zhen Jin thought again and shook his head slightly. Previous practice had already proved that the mutated part, once without the support of the magic crystal, would quickly turn gray and turn into a pile of carbon ash. Therefore, the plan of eating himself would not succeed. When Zhen Jin's senses reached the limit, he found that he had two other mutations. One was moss. The other was the meat of the acid green lizard. This moss? Zhen Jin looked at the back of his hand after the mutation and immediately felt that it was somewhat familiar. In the next breath, he recognized it. Isn't this the moss that poisoned me? Setting off from the monkey-tail brown bear's cave, he and ZD explored the road together. In the process, his skin was poisoned because it brushed against the moss. ZD tried to detoxify it but could only alleviate it, not cure it. In the end, the two of them found the source of the poisoning and used the moss as a material to make a medicine, which allowed Zhen Jin to completely eradicate it. Let's call it green spot moss. Zhen Jin remembered that after being poisoned, green spots grew on his face. These spots were round and small, but he himself did not feel anything strange. The last type of meat was the meat of the acid green lizard. Zhen Jin also transformed it. It was basically the same as mutton, and its practical value was not high. After a while, Zhen Jin's understanding of the magic core in his heart deepened a lot. In that case, after the magic core absorbs external life forms, the energy stored in the magic core can be used for any mutated form. But why can I transform these, but not the blue wolf, the python vine, the horned black panther, and the blade spider? After thinking for a while, Zhen Jin had his own answer. The spear scorpion. Is it because I activated the magic core and absorbed all its life? The monkey-tail brown bear. Is it because I received a large amount of blood infusion when I received ZD's treatment? I ate a lot of goat meat. Similarly, there was lizard meat. Recently, my main food source has been lizard meat. However, I also ate snake meat, flying squirrel meat, and some other small insects like spiders and scorpions. Maybe it's because I ate too little of these food. As for the fire poison bee, I was poisoned. There was a large amount of fire poison in my body, so much so that I was on the verge of death. The poison and the meat both entered my body. From this point of view, there is no difference between the two. So, they were all quietly absorbed by the magic core. As for the other magical beasts, although I have encountered them, I have not had close contact with them. The blue wolf, the lava giant turtle, the python vine, and so on are all the same. Thinking of this, Zhenjin obtained another very valuable speculation. At present, it seems that the magic core absorbs and transforms living things. Pure magic cannot be absorbed by the magic core. Zhenjin had been poisoned by the cold poison, and there was a large amount of chaotic frost magic in his body. However, these magic powers were not absorbed and transformed by the magic core, or he would not have been poisoned. So, the function of the magic core in my heart is probably to forcibly absorb and transform life into a special mysterious magic power. Once this magic power is activated, it can cause a certain degree of mutation in the human body, transforming into a series of life tissue structures related to the life that was previously absorbed. Chapter 69. Then, how do I replenish this magical energy? Almost instantly, the scene of Zhenjin defeating the silver spear scorpion jumped into his mind. That was a moment of life and death, a moment of life and death. It left a deep impression on Zhenjin, as if it was engraved in the youth's heart. Zhenjin immediately stood up and walked to the corpse of a spear scorpion. The silver spear scorpion had already turned into ashes, and the other surviving spear scorpions had escaped, but there was still an ordinary spear scorpion that had died. Zhenjin activated the magic crystal in his heart, and his palm glowed with red light. The red light could not be emitted directly. Does it need to be in contact for it to be effective? Zhenjin frowned slightly. He did not rush to put his palm on the scorpion's shell, but stopped first. Zhenjin carefully felt the magic crystal in his heart and muttered, "It can be activated at any time, and can also be stopped immediately, and there will not be any backlash from the magic crystal. Moreover, this activation and stopping does not seem to constitute a mutation of the human body, so the consumption is very little, completely negligible. Then, let's test the blood first." This spear scorpion was killed by Zhenjin's scorpion tail, and scorpion blood continuously flowed from the wound. A lot of the scorpion blood flowed to the ground, steaming on the hot volcanic lava surface, and the strong smell of blood quickly spread in all directions. The red light enveloped Zhenjin's palm. Zhenjin put his palm into a small pool of blood on the ground. The red light spread instantly, almost disappearing in a flash. The small pool of blood immediately turned into a pool of carbon powder. As the scorpion blood continued to drip down, the carbon powder immediately mixed in with the blood. As long as it is a part of a living body, it can be transformed through the magic crystal. Zhenjin waited patiently for a moment. When the small pool of blood on the ground was almost the same as before, he activated the magic crystal again to absorb it. This time, the transformed and stored magic energy is a little more than before. Is it because the scorpion blood has just been accumulated, so the magic energy is dispersing better than before? Zhenjin guessed. Although mana can't be directly converted into mana, as long as it's targeted at a life form, the higher the amount of mana in the life form, the more special mana can be converted. Therefore, under normal circumstances, the higher the life level of a life form, the higher the quality of its magic power. After absorbing and transforming it, the more magic energy in its magic core. What's the upper limit? At the very least, the magic cores of silver-level life forms can be absorbed. In the end, Zhenjin covered Spear Scorpion's corpse with his glowing red palm. The same thing happened again. Red light spread out from Zhen Jin's palm and turned into 4 bloodlines. The blood threads wrapped around the spear scorpion's corpse like a snake, and then quickly turned dark, as if they had penetrated the insides of the spear scorpion's corpse. After 2 breaths of time, the 4 bloodlines became clear again. The blood-red color was even more vibrant and rich than before. The blood veins were rapidly retracted, and a lot of mana was added to the demon core. At the same time, the spear scorpion's corpse turned into a small pile of ash. It can't be compared to the gains from absorbing the silver spear scorpion. Practice proved Zhen Jin's previous guess. Wait, I can transform the claws of a spear scorpion. Originally, Zhen Jin could only mutate the tail and shell of a spear scorpion. After absorbing the 2nd bronze-level spear scorpion's corpse, he added a new spear scorpion's transformation. The young knight's eyes flashed with a light of contemplation. From the looks of it, the more life forms of the same type absorbed, the more options there will be for variations. These options are related to this life form. As long as I absorb and transform enough spear scorpions, theoretically, I can completely transform into a spear scorpion. Zhen Jin continued to clean up the battlefield. In this battle, his spider blade was damaged and broken into many pieces. He carefully picked up these pieces from the battlefield. Then, he activated the magic core in his heart again. A red light appeared, and the pieces of the spider blade quickly turned into ash. Zhen Jin sprinkled it lightly, and it turned into ash and scattered. Zhen Jin focused his attention on the magic core again. Soon, a hint of joy appeared on his face. He tried to activate the magic core again, and the 5 fingers on his left hand quickly mutated. After a few breaths, they turned into 5 slender spider blades. The 5 spider blades were very small, and could not be compared to the blades he swung before. They were only slightly longer than the 5 fingers of an adult. However, the blades were shiny and emitted a cold light. Zhen Jin's 5 fingers moved and clashed with each other. When the blades collided with each other, a crisp sound similar to metal clashing could be heard. Obviously, the sharpness of these blades is the same as when I first obtained the spider blade. Zhen Jin tried to activate more magic energy from the magic core in his heart again. The spider blades that his 5 fingers mutated became longer and longer, and looked like they were on the same level as the broken spider blade from before. However, what followed was the increasing consumption of his magic energy. Zhen Jin quickly stopped this attempt. The magic energy in the core must be conserved. I've tried many times today, and I've used up enough. That's amazing. The young man praised from the bottom of his heart. With such a powerful trump card, he could face many dangers calmly. The existence that could threaten him before was now threatened by the young man. With such a mysterious and wonderful magic core, I'll definitely be able to walk out of this island and leave this place alive. Ever since he woke up, the young man had never had such confidence in escaping. Zhen Jin scanned the place one last time. It was here that he controlled the magic core in his heart for the first time. Perhaps this is the turning point of my fate. Zhen Jin smiled. Without hesitation, the young man turned around and left the battlefield. He returned to the original cave without a hitch. Sang Su and ZD were already gone. The spear scorpions were defeated and fled. If they encounter ZD and Zhen Jin, their situation will be very bad. I have to find them quickly. But before that, Zhen Jin focused his gaze on the corpses of the spear scorpions in the cave. Red lights kept flashing in the cave. Previously, the exploration team fought with their backs to the wall and killed many spear scorpions. Under the red light, these spear scorpions were turned into piles of ashes. Although it had been left there for a night and most of the magic power in the spear scorpions had dissipated, little drops made a mickle. At this moment, the magic power reserve in Zhen Jin's core had reached an unprecedented level. Sensing the core, Zhen Jin raised his eyebrows slightly. As expected, scorpion shell, scorpion tail, chelicerae, scorpion eyes, scorpion feet. I can now transform into a complete spear scorpion. Zhenjin had already expected this result. He just did not expect that the process to achieve this result would be so short. The corpses of the spear scorpions were all absorbed by Zhenjin. The young knight was not in a hurry to leave. Instead, he went into the deepest part of the cave. There, he found Baiya. As expected. Zhenjin sighed softly. Baiya was abandoned. Whether it was ZD or Tsang-Su, these two people could not even protect themselves. It was impossible for them to bring Baiya, a burden, with them when escaping. But Zhenjin could not blame these two. Everything was for survival. Zhenjin put his finger under Baiya's nose and immediately felt a weak breath. Baiya was not dead yet. Zhenjin reached out and touched Baiya's forehead. He found that his high fever had subsided. Good job. The young man praised, seeming very happy. Since he woke up, he had been fighting, struggling to survive, fighting for his ideals. Baiya also did not give up. Even if he was unconscious, he was still trying to survive. This kind of spirit and willpower resonated with the needle gold. But soon, the young man's expression became a little complicated and subtle. Looking at Baiya with his own eyes, he could not help but recall the scene when his life was hanging by a thread. At the moment of death, Zhenjin was so battered and exhausted. In the face of death, he could not help but feel a strong sense of fear, which made him panic. His desire to survive was so strong that it made him roar in his heart, trying to break his moral bottom line. Those who are weaker than me can escape? I am stronger than them, but I am going to die? If I had listened to Tsang-Su's advice and eaten human flesh, maybe I could have been saved. Why should I listen to the words of a person of the same age in my memory? Something like, hell is at your feet, depravity is imminent? Bullshit. I am so stupid. I realized that living is more important than anything else. Even if others die, what does it have to do with me? I want to live. These were all real thoughts that came from the deepest part of his heart, and these thoughts would not have come to him under normal circumstances. Although it happened not long ago, it all felt like a dream. What a nightmare! Could it be? I am really a greedy person who is afraid of death? Am I a despicable and shameless person? Zhenjin asked himself in his heart. The joy of surviving had faded. The curiosity to explore the secrets of the magic nucleus was gone. Zhenjin finally had to face himself. The life and death battle with the silver spear scorpion made him see his ugly side. Is that really me? Would I really think that? The young man half knelt beside Baiya. His lowered face seemed to be shrouded in a layer of darkness. He lowered his head. His posture was no longer as straight as before, and looked a little crooked. No, I am a holy knight. I am a holy knight. Although he told himself this in his heart, Zhenjin still felt shame, self-blame, and doubt towards himself. Cough, cough, cough. At this moment, Baiya let out a cough, and then in the next moment, he actually slowly opened his eyes. Master Jean, Master Jean. Baiya realized that Jean Zhen, who was half kneeling beside her, had a very weak voice. Zhenjin's body shook, and he hurriedly leaned closer to Baiya. It's me, Baiya, you have to hold on. Sir. Thank you, you must have saved me. Baiya looked at Zhenjin, full of gratitude. After saying this, he closed his eyes again, and fell into a coma. He was too weak, and his body's condition was very poor. Yes, I saved you. I will definitely save you. Zhenjin stared blankly at Baiya, his mouth constantly muttering. Baiya's words were like a ray of light, a pure white dawn, illuminating the young man's heart and dispelling the gloominess on his face. It was as if a force was injected into the young knight's body. The young man raised his head, and his posture was no longer stoop. His eyes swept across the cave, and the scene from last night appeared in front of his eyes. He seemed to hear the echoes of his voice in his ears. At dawn, the young knight said in a powerful voice, I will not treat people as food. At that time he was very firm. "Don't try to persuade me, I have already made my decision." No matter how dangerous the situation was, he still maintained his optimism and hope. "Let's go, according to this time, we will see the light of dawn when we walk out of the cave." In the young knight's mind, the teachings of the Dark Clan appeared once again. Hell is at your feet, and depravity is at hand. Jinjin's eyes gradually brightened. "I have not fallen. I have held on to my bottom line, the principles of a knight. Don't worry." He looked at the unconscious Baiya. "I will save you. And not eat you." The young man carried Baiya on his back and slowly stood up. Bringing Baiya with him, he left the battlefield in the cave. Dawn had already arrived. Chapter 70. The black rocks were twisted and stacked on top of each other. This was the appearance of the magma after it cooled down. Hot steam rose and the pungent smell of sulfur filled the air. On the spacious black surface, the two of them walked together. One of them was a young girl. She was wearing a tattered apprentice robe. The hood did not cover her head, revealing her delicate and beautiful yet haggard face. The most attractive thing was the girl's eyes. They were bright and clear like the finest purple crystals. At this moment, the girl's eyes were filled with worry. The other person was an old man. His white beard reached his chest. Because he had not taken care of it for a long time, it was dirty like a rag that had been used for a long time. He wore a pair of glasses on his nose, but the lens was broken. He walked unsteadily. His body was thin, and the wrinkles on his face made the suffering he had suffered even more. The old man and the young girl were Tsang-Su and Zd. According to Zhen Jin's plan, when Zhen Jin was the first to break through and lure away all the spear scorpions, the two of them took the opportunity to escape the cave. At this moment they were going back the way they came. They wanted to leave this area of igneous rocks and return to the desert. Rumble. Suddenly, a thunderous sound came from afar. Zd and Tsang-Su stopped and looked back. They saw the volcano in the distance spewing out a huge amount of red magma. The magma spewed high up. Just by looking at it, it was at least 800 meters high. Thick black smoke covered half of the sky. The bright red magma rushed to the peak and started splashing everywhere. Zd and Tsang-Su were shocked. "Luckily, we are still outside. Let's go," Tsang-Su urged. Zd walked slower and slower, turning her head from time to time. Tsang-Su knew what the girl was waiting for. He immediately persuaded her, "Lord Zhen Jin will definitely meet up with us. We have to have faith in him. We were able to escape because Master ignored the danger and lured away all the spear scorpions. It wasn't easy for us to escape here, but it was mostly due to luck. We can't let down the Lord Zhen Jin's efforts. Zd gritted her teeth and looked at the volcanic ash that filled the sky. "Although I've left some pink potions along the way, the volcanic ash will quickly cover these marks. Let's wait a little longer." Chi. Just as Zd's voice fell, the ground near the two of them suddenly shot out dozens of pale yellow streams of air. The airflow was very rapid, and the smell of sulfur in the air quickly became very strong. Bang! The ground shook violently. Zd and Tsang-Su couldn't help but sway. It was as if they were in a small boat, and the bottom of the boat was being hit by a great white shark. What's going on? While Zd and Tsang-Su were bewildered, the jet of air rapidly grew thicker. The cracks between the black volcanic rocks rapidly expanded, and then red lava began to spurt out from these holes. For a moment, the temperature in the air crazily rose. Zd and Tsang-Su hurriedly ran away, leaving this dangerous area and arriving at a relatively stable volcanic rock a few hundred meters away. The cracks in the volcanic rock, where they had been standing, had already expanded to dozens of meters. Large amounts of lava surged out, covering and destroying everything at the same time. Then, the land within a radius of 200 meters disappeared, and was replaced by a pool of red lava. A huge creature slowly rose from the lava. It had a huge turtle shell. The shell wasn't flat, and there were many holes in between. The giant turtle's head was as red as earth, and two thick tusks protruded from the sides of its cheeks. The lava, which was more than 1,000 degrees Celsius, didn't hurt the giant turtle. The giant turtle leisurely climbed out of the lava, its posture leisurely. It was obviously overweight, and its 4 thick legs would sink deeply into the volcanic rock every time it stepped on it. When it pulled its legs out, some red lava would seep out from the deep pits it left behind. Semi-liquid red lava would also seep out from the holes in the giant turtle's shell. The aura of a gold-level creature was very vast, and it intimidated ZD and Sang-Soo's hearts. However, what shocked them even more was that it wasn't just one lava giant turtle. Following the first one, a second, a third, and a fourth emerged from the lava pool. 4 lava giant turtles climbed onto the shore and wandered around, even letting out an elephant-like cry. Looks like this is their home. The one I saw in the rainforest was probably teleported out, ZD thought. Could it be that this is a lava giant turtle? Sang-Soo's voice trembled. This was the first time he had seen a lava giant turtle. But before this, he and Jin had exchanged detailed information about each other. Sang-Soo's eyes shone brightly, and his voice trembled not because of fear, but because of excitement. Gold-level magical beasts, but their bodies of flesh and blood can swim freely in lava. They aren't elemental lifeforms. Amazing, too amazing! Let's go. This time, it was ZD's turn to remind them. This place was too dangerous. The two had no choice but to escape. The lava giant turtle seemed to be gentle and didn't pursue them. We should be safe at this distance. After retreating for more than 1,000 meters, ZD stopped and looked into the distance again. Sang-Soo sighed and didn't escape alone. He stood beside ZD. It hasn't appeared yet. Jin is probably doomed. This was Sang-Soo's heartfelt thought, but he didn't say it out loud. Lord Jin's body is in poor condition. He hasn't eaten at all and is exhausted. Facing the encirclement of scorpions, his stamina will be greatly depleted. The more time passes, the slimmer his chances of survival. Sigh, Sang-Soo sighed inwardly. He really hoped that Jin could survive. With Jin's protection, his chances of survival would be greatly increased. Sang-Soo knew very well that with just him and ZD, escaping from this island was simply wishful thinking. However, after waiting for a while, the two still didn't see Jin's figure. Sang-Soo's heart sank to the bottom of the valley. The disappointment in his heart kept accumulating and finally turned into despair. He looked at the girl's frail back and was thinking about how to persuade ZD to leave when ZD suddenly cried out in surprise. Then, Sang-Soo also saw Jin's figure. A large amount of volcanic ash scattered between heaven and earth. A young man was carrying a young man. His steps were very steady and his speed wasn't slow. His posture revealed a sense of stubbornness and determination. "Sir, it's Lord Jin." Sang-Soo also cried out, overjoyed. He also brought by you back. ZD sighed, her tone complicated. This is a holy night. Sang-Soo praised from the bottom of his heart. After a while, the 4 of them successfully gathered. Jin distributed some weapons to ZD and Sang-Soo. This was what he got after cleaning up the cave battlefield. These weapons originally belonged to the other members of the exploration team. These members had all sacrificed themselves. "Sir, you're injured. Let me take a look." ZD saw the wound on Jin's shoulder and her eyes quickly turned red. The wound on Jin's shoulder was caused by the silver spear scorpion. On the spot, the wound had already been bandaged. Although Jin killed the spear scorpion and took control of the magic core, there was no way to heal the wound. On the way, after Jin confirmed that Baiyu was in a deep coma, he activated the magic core in his heart and mutated the wound. When he mutated the scorpion shell would cover the wound. When he turned into mutton or lizard meat, the wound would still be damaged. When he turned into the fur of the poisonous fire bee, the fur would cover the surface of the skin. However, a wound without skin could not mutate into fur. ZD carefully untied the cloth and exposed the wound. After examining it, the girl exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. "Sir, your wound should have been pierced by the scorpion tail. Although the injury is serious, it has now stabilized. Sir, your body's recovery is really extraordinary." ZD tested a new potion on the spot. She took out a few bottles of potion from the small leather bag at her waist and poured out some powder or liquid. Then, she mixed them in an empty bottle and shook it violently. Finally, she carefully poured the potion that she had just made on Jinjin's wound. Jinjin immediately felt a wave of coolness, and the pain of the wound from time to time was quickly alleviated. It was really different to have a pharmacist by his side. "We can't stay here for long, let's go quickly." After hurriedly treating the wound, Jinjin urged, "I have already shaken off the scorpions, I don't want to be entangled by them again." Jinjin concealed the death of the silver spear scorpion. Although the core was under his control, he did not intend to reveal this secret. He was a holy knight, but the core could mutate him into a magical beast. The former was open and aboveboard, while the latter was strange and ferocious. The two had completely different styles and could not be directly linked. If people saw Jinjin's mutation, they would most likely suspect that Jinjin had been lured into depravity by the devil. In addition, the volcanic eruption also helped Jinjin a little. The volcanic ash covering the ground would cover all traces of the battlefield. If the lava erupted and rolled there, it would be even better, completely destroying all traces. "Yes, we had better leave this place as soon as possible," Sang-Soo agreed. Before leaving, Jinjin took a deep look at the 4 lava tortoises. "I wonder if my core can absorb gold-ranked life forms?" This question flashed through the youth's mind. The lava would melt the scorpion's shell, and the red light from the core also needed to come into contact with the target. It was very risky for the needle gold to deal with the lava tortoise. Moreover, he had to hide it from ZD and Sang-Soo. Lastly, he had to take care of ZD, Sang-Soo and the unconscious Baiyu. Therefore, Jinjin wisely gave up on the idea of attacking the lava tortoises. ZD did not know that Jinjin had actually thought of attacking the lava tortoises. On the way, the girl was worried, "We have used up all our food, and there is very little water left." Not only that, the entire exploration team only had 4 people left: Jinjin, ZD, Sang-Soo and Baiyu. Sang-Soo said, "Sir, I suggest we go back the way we came and return to the acid green lizard's nest. Lizard meat is edible, and large groups of lizards can survive, so there must be a large water source near the nest. The possibility of an oasis is very high." "Then let's go back." Jinjin nodded. "Let's try to reach the gold stones tonight." Chapter 71. His left foot stepped on the black volcanic rock, while Jinjin's right foot was already on the desert. After half a day, they once again came to the boundary between the desert and the lava landscape. As far as the eye could see, the yellowish-brown sand spread to the end of the horizon. The scorching sun distorted in the distance, turning into a dense fog. Jinjin, ZD, and Sang-Soo were all hungry and thirsty. Without food, everyone was starving. The high temperature brought by the volcanic eruption made them sweat profusely. This was very dangerous. Sweating would consume the precious water in their bodies. They had to replenish their water in advance. This consumed a lot of water, which was not much to begin with. Everyone rarely spoke and maintained their silence. Their footsteps paused at the boundary, then Jinjin carried Baiyu and continued to walk forward. Carrying a young man, Jinjin's burden was the heaviest. On the way, Sang-Soo tried to persuade Jinjin, "If you don't treat him as food, then just abandon him." Jinjin refused without hesitation, and warned Sang-Soo not to mention this again in the future. The young knight's firm attitude made Sang-Soo speechless. ZD repeatedly said, "She is willing to share the burden with Zhenjin and replace Zhenjin to carry Baiya." Sang-Soo could only helplessly make the same gesture. But both of their proposals were rejected by Zhenjin. ZD was only a 15-year-old girl, and Sang-Soo was an old man with a white beard. Both of them were also in bad physical condition. If one of them was paralyzed, it would be even more difficult. I once said that I will do my best to save everyone, and will not give up on anyone. This is my promise, and also my responsibility. Zhenjin said to ZD and Sang-Soo, "Your Excellency, your noble character even makes the bright stars in the night sky pale in comparison." Sang-Soo sighed from the bottom of his heart. "You are the model of the Knights Templar." Zhenjin smiled bitterly and shook his head. He was the only one who understood his own feelings. He had once wavered and almost fallen. He had even had the evil thought of treating Baiya as food. He was ashamed of it and doubted himself. Therefore, saving Baiya at this moment was more like a form of verification. He wanted to prove to himself that he was a qualified Templar Knight. Zhenjin was in a very difficult situation at the moment. He felt his knees and legs go weak. He had not eaten anything since last night. After the battle with Spear Scorpion, he had barely survived. He was injured, and his stamina had been severely depleted. Although he had mastered the heart core, the mutation was not enough to fill his stomach. Its empty stomach secreted gastric acid, as if even a piece of iron could be digested by it. His throat felt like it was filled with volcanic ash. In order to divert his attention, Zhenjin began to think about the many questions that troubled him. The first question was, what did the heart core absorb? Any life form, whether it was complete or a part of a life form, could be absorbed by the heart core. Other than turning it into a special bright red magic energy, the heart core also had the option to mutate more. So, what the heart core absorbs is actually blood? Although Zhenjin had lost his memory, he knew that the concept of blood was not limited to blood. Blood was not only a talent for cultivation, it was also an information inheritance of a life form. For example, drinking dragon blood could not make one a dragon. Dragon blood included dragon blood, dragon scales, dragon body, dragon crystal, dragon language, dragon magic, battle techniques, and so on. Now that I have mastered the heart core, does that mean I can master all the blood in the world? Zhenjin was not here, so he could not help but feel a rush of excitement. He knew very well what this meant. By mastering the heart core, one could absorb and transform external blood, which would bring about unlimited power, wealth, and resources. If a life form had an outstanding bloodline, then the faster and more efficient the cultivation would be. It would grow rapidly and become stronger in a relatively short period of time. After possessing great power, one would naturally have followers. Even if one did not have followers, one could overturn the old order with one's own strength. Violence brought power, and power made it easier to obtain resources. With abundant resources, the cultivation of the strong would be like adding wings to a tiger. In this way, the strong would become stronger, and the weak would become weaker. Over time, the strong would transform into the upper ruling class, and the weak would become the lower class that was ruled and exploited. This was the history of all races and also the current situation. The cornerstone of the human nobles' domination of society and their unwavering existence was bloodline. Bloodline was very, very important. The influence of bloodline ran through one's entire life. Without enough bloodline, one was an ordinary person. The members of the exploration team who had sacrificed themselves were such people. Sang-Soo was able to become one of the nobles' butlers. Such an achievement was already very high. In the entire human society, examples like him were very rare. Huang Zhao and Lan Zhao had bloodline, so they had reached the bronze level by relying on the common qi cultivation method. Unsurprisingly, this was the peak of their lives. Not only was it difficult to improve, but their chi cultivation and life level would also decline with age. ZD was a black iron level mage. She admitted that her personal cultivation potential had been tapped out. Why? It was because she did not have a noble bloodline. Zhen Jin belonged to the 100 Needles family. This family was once a great noble in the south, and the quality of their bloodline was very high. The source of their bloodline could be traced back to the legendary Golden Needle Queen Bee. Therefore, the members of the 100 Needles family could theoretically cultivate to the legendary level. In history, the 100 Needles family also had endless powerhouses: silver level, gold level, and even saint level. It was just that no legendary powerhouse had appeared yet. The legendary level was the theoretical limit of the 100 Needles bloodline. In this world, there were many more bloodlines that were better than the 100 Needles bloodline. The Shengming Emperor represented the Templar bloodline, the Allah Grand Duke represented the Seeker bloodline, the Chimera bloodline of Grand Duke Heir, the Joy bloodline of Duke Henry, the Dark Demon bloodline of the Dark Clan, and so on. The upper limit of these bloodlines was generally higher than the legendary level. The efficiency of cultivation was also higher than the 100 Needles bloodline, and the results of cultivation were much greater. The advantage of the 100 Needles bloodline was accuracy, and these bloodlines brought about more comprehensive advantages. If I master the Templar bloodline, wouldn't I have the hope of becoming the second Xingming Emperor? No, in theory. How could I only master the Templar bloodline? The Seeker bloodline, the Chimera bloodline, and so on, I can have them all, because I have this magic crystal in my heart. As long as I kill enough targets and take the bloodline from them. Thinking of this, Zhen Jin's heart suddenly trembled. A chill ran through his body in an instant, making him extremely frightened. What's wrong with me? I actually want to sacrifice others. I want to make a move on those high-ranking nobles, and even the members of the Templar family. If I'm not careful, I'll make the entire 100 Needles family fall into eternal damnation. No, I shouldn't have such thoughts. This is a crime. To satisfy my own selfish desires, to sacrifice the innocent. This is too cruel. This is too evil. I am Zhen Jin. I am a Templar Knight. I won't do it like this. I swear, I won't make a move on the innocent. I won't walk the path of evil and depravity just to satisfy my own selfish desires. Zhen Jin secretly warned himself. At the same time, he developed a strong sense of vigilance towards the heart core. It's too wonderful, too mysterious. It helps me to survive in the face of death, but it also constantly tempts me to fall into the path of evil and cruelty. However, in reality, it may not be able to absorb so many bloodlines. All of this is just my guess. It can absorb the bloodlines of silver-ranked lifeforms, but I haven't even tried to absorb gold-ranked lifeforms, not to mention saint-ranked and legend-ranked ones. Maybe it can't absorb them? Also, is there any harm in using the demon core to absorb and transform other bloodlines? Every time I mutate, are there any repercussions? Is it possible that there are no repercussions, but they're actually hidden so deeply that I can't detect them? Will these repercussions accumulate in the future and cause me to explode? Or will I become a complete magical beast, unable to return to human form? Zhen Jin's eyes were filled with a hint of darkness. Such a strange, and excessively powerful foreign object suddenly appeared in the human body. As long as one had some sense, they would be vigilant and suspicious. They would think of ways to understand it, do their best to control it, and at the same time avoid any possible dangers. But now, Zhen Jin had only figured out some of the uses of the heart core. As for the nature of this foreign object, he still didn't understand it at all. Why can the demon core in my heart be activated? Zhen Jin always remembered that this island was a special anti-magic environment. Low-level battle energy and magic could not be used. Even my prayers were blocked. Why can the heart core be activated? The magical energy in the heart core is very strange and mysterious. It doesn't belong to battle energy, magic, or divine arts. Could it be that it bypassed the anti-magic mechanism? So it wasn't affected? Or is it because the purpose of the master of the island was to create this kind of demon core? So, the entire surrounding environment was deliberately created to give the demon core great preferential treatment? Zhen Jin's thoughts were scattered, and he thought of more and more. But all of this was a mystery. He had no answers. At present, I only know that as I use the heart core again and again, my control over this demon core is also rapidly deepening. The first time was when he was dealing with the silver-ranked blade spider. Zhen Jin experienced the first mutation. The second time was when he was facing the attack of the plasma flying squirrel. Zhen Jin felt the demon core in his heart for the first time. The third time happened just this morning. Zhen Jin had preliminary control over the demon core and killed the spear scorpion leader. In the future, will my control over the heart core be deepened? The most important thing is actually that old question. How did this thing come about? After thinking for a long time, Zhen Jin felt that the most likely answer to this question was still related to the master of the island. According to Tsang Su and ZD's discussion and speculation, the master of the island was a powerhouse. He or he transformed the entire island and created a large number of monsters in an attempt to stabilize the chaotic magical energy in the monsters' bodies and make it reach a balance. The goat's magical energy was a kind of half-finished product, showing the direction of the master of the island's efforts. The anti-magic environment and the teleportation array encouraged the monsters to continue killing each other. The real goal was to let the living beings break through and leap under the stimulation of life and death to produce demon cores. So, this demon core is very likely to be accidentally produced in my body after I fought with the bear and was treated by ZD's medicine. Thinking back carefully, I was poisoned with a lot of fire poison at that time. This demon core is the product of my fierce battle with the poisonous fire bees and the monkey-tailed brown bear. Did the master of the island encourage the monsters to kill each other, plan to use life and death battles to stimulate the production of the demon core? Perhaps the reason why he didn't succeed is because he lacked the most crucial factor, people? And I just happened to fill in this flaw. Chapter 72. It was noon. The scorching sun hung high in the sky above the withered desert. Waves of heat constantly assaulted them, and the sand under their feet was frighteningly hot. The hunger and lack of physical strength made them dizzy. Tsang Su and ZD staggered as they walked. There were a few times when their knees almost gave out and they almost fell to the ground. Because of this, Zhen Jin and the others had no choice but to hide in the shadow of the sand dune to rest. Baiya was still unconscious, and the other three were gasping for breath. It was as if the gods had taken pity on these pitiful people. A wind blew in the desert. Although the wind was not strong, it eliminated some of the scorching heat. As the wind blew, fine sand rolled on the sand dune facing the wind, and on the other side of the sand dune, sand flowed like water. The rolling sand made a rustling sound, and the resting people could not appreciate the beauty of the sound itself. A large amount of physical strength was consumed, and Zhen Jin and the others, who had empty stomachs, felt very tormented. Zhen Jin felt that he was so hungry that his chest was sticking to his back. As soon as he entered the shadow of the sand dune, he put the unconscious Baiya on the ground. When he first set out, he was carrying Baiya on his back, and did not feel that it was a heavy burden. But now, he felt like he was carrying an elephant. With the heavy burden gone, Zhen Jin immediately felt relaxed. He did not forget to check on Baiya's condition. He has a high fever again. Zhen Jin's eyes dimmed. Baiya's condition kept going back and forth, and it was very bad. Zhen Jin wanted to help him, but Baiya had already used ZD's medicine. If there was enough food and water, Bai Ye's body would be well nourished. But the current situation was that Zhen Jin and the others only drank a few mouthfuls of water on the way, and did not eat at all. Zhen Jin really wanted to help, but there was nothing he could do about it. He could only open the water bag and pry open Bai Ye's mouth to pour a small amount of water in. The water had already been divided into 3 equal portions, and everyone had a water bag. Zhen Jin gave Bai Ye his share. Sang-Su and ZD watched Zhen Jin in silence. Both of them sat on the ground, motionless. They didn't want to speak at all, or rather, they didn't even have the strength to speak. Zhen Jin also remained silent. He sat quietly, feeling like he was an hourglass. His physical strength was like sand grains, falling into his body one by one, accumulating and storing. Ever since he woke up on this island, Zhen Jin had never been as thirsty as he was now. The closest he had come was the day he broke free from the bottom of the sand. But at that time, he had food, a desert viper with no eyes. Now, Zhen Jin looked at the withered desert, looked at the vast sky and earth, and hoped that something like a viper would attack him. Once, he had just eliminated the rat pack and had food and loyal subordinate. That night, he was teleported away, and all his hard work turned into bubbles. He crawled out from the sand and was attacked by a viper. His heart was filled with sorrow. But now, he sat on the sand and recalled that scene. He felt that the viper's attack might have been a gift from nature or the mercy of the gods. Zhen Jin suddenly had an epiphany. Ha ha! He couldn't help but chuckle. His voice aroused ZD and Sang-Su's doubts. Sensing their gazes, Zhen Jin explained, "There have been many times, when fate's attacks and torments have happened to me. Every time, I thought that I had suffered the heaviest suffering in the world. But, in fact, that's not the case. There is no such thing as the most difficult time. In life, there will be more torturous hardship. Now, my situation is even more difficult than when I was attacked by a viper. Maybe in the future there will be more difficult times for me." ZD was silent. They had exchanged information long ago, and the girl knew what Zhen Jin had encountered after he was separated. Sang-Su also laughed. "My lord, after hearing you say that, I feel inexplicably relaxed. Your attitude is no longer optimistic, but open-minded." ZD thought for a while and said softly, "Suffering is a kind of wealth. The difference is whether people can dig out this wealth from suffering." Zhen Jin recalled everything he had experienced on the island since he woke up, especially the magic core in his heart. "If that's the case, then I'm a millionaire." The conversation ended there. After a few words, everyone immediately felt more tired. For a long time after that, they remained silent. As time passed, the power of the vicious sunlight weakened. Zhen Jin carried Bai Ye on his back and led ZD and Sang-Su on their way. Their luck turned for the better. On the way, they found a withered willow, as well as many spiders and scorpions. The latter all became precious food. They also found a desert lizard and a desert jerboa. This jerboa was an ordinary beast. It was small in size, similar to an ordinary mouse. Its ears were wide and its hearing was very sensitive. It had yellow fur that was very similar to the desert. Its hind legs were well developed, and with a light jump, it could jump 1 or 2 meters. After Zhen Jin gave chase, its corpse was placed in Zhen Jin's pocket. The lizard and the jerboa were not eaten immediately, and the rest went into Sang-Su and ZD's mouths. Even so, this replenishment could not compare to their physical exhaustion, and they had to stop many times to rest. Their progress was greatly reduced, and even when night fell, they still had not reached their destination, the gold hemp stones. Sang-Su sized up the surrounding terrain, looked at the stars, and drew a map on the sand. "I don't know much about the stars, but the terrain is familiar. We have only been in the lava landscape for a few days, so the sand dunes should not have changed too much. So we are not far from the gold hemp stones. Tomorrow morning we will reach it after a short walk." Let's rest here tonight, sir. We can't walk any more. The old scholar sighed. The night wind blew his snow-white beard, causing it to tremble slightly. ZD and Sang-Soo both knew the benefits of reaching the gold hemp stones, but the two of them could not walk any more. In fact, Zhenjin was not much better. The young knight nodded. We have firewood from cutting down the willow. The desert night is very cold, but we can light a bonfire to get through the night. Sparks flew from the sparks, and the firewood was extremely dry. The bonfire burned smoothly. Everyone sat around the bonfire. The bodies of the small lizard and the jumping mouse were pierced through by 2 wooden sticks. Zhenjin picked them up and let them be roasted over the fire. Smelling the aroma of the roasted meat, ZD could not help but gulp. This must be the most delicious food in the world, ZD said, her eyes revealing desire. Sang-Soo also stared at the 2 portions of roasted meat. He looked away with difficulty and grabbed a handful of sand under him. I look at this handful of sand now and feel that they are incomparably cute. They are so cute that I can't help but want to swallow them. ZD laughed and agreed. I feel that the black volcanic lava is very similar to fluffy chocolate bread with a burnt surface. I have read some historical records. When a famine broke out in the empire, many of the refugees ate themselves to death by eating soil. I understand their feelings now. Hunger can really drive people crazy. They don't think about anything but eating. They want to eat everything they see, eat grass, eat soil, and eat sand. Sang-Soo let out a sigh. There are indeed people who eat soil. The southeast and southwest coast of the empire will have a famine every few years. The refugees by the sea will collect soil, mix it with butter and salt, and make mud biscuit. The Sand Tower family once sent me to deliver a batch of relief supplies. When I arrived, I also tasted these mud biscuit. Speaking of which, the texture of these mud biscuits is actually very delicate. But when you eat it, you will feel the unique wet taste of the sea. These mud biscuits are basically the size of an adult's palm. The refugees will spread these biscuits on the ground and expose them to the sun. I only took a small bite. The smell of the soil remained in my mouth for several hours. The local refugees have been eating these things for a long time. The elderly and children eat them to fill their stomach. So, they are as thin as firewood and have chronic diarrhea. Almost every day, a child dies from diarrhea. Do you know? When we were on the road during the day, I swore again. But now, if there are mud biscuits, I'm willing to eat until my stomach is full. Zhenjin turned the skewer in his hand and asked, speaking of digestion, Mr. Sang-Soo, how is the digestion of wild beasts? What kind of wild beasts have the strongest digestion? Sang-Soo muttered, compared to humans, wild beasts have very strong digestion. Hyenas are notorious for eating bones. So, almost all the corpses visited by hyenas have no bones left. The bearded vulture has an extremely corrosive digestive fluid. It's very easy for it to digest bones and bone marrow. Pythons can digest food raw, whether it's crocodiles or elephant. Generally speaking, birds have the strongest digestion ability. Eating insects only takes 15 minutes to digest. Eating berries and other foods can be excreted in 30 minutes. Some seabirds eat fish. Some fish have just been swallowed, the tail is still in their mouth, and the head has already dissolved in their stomach. Then, how is the digestion ability of the spear scorpion? Zhenjin asked again. Sang-Soo said, very strong. The spear scorpion is a magical beast. Its innate ability surpasses that of normal wild beasts. It can eat metal and has an extremely strong digestive ability. It can completely melt and decompose metal. According to my autopsy, its digestion speed is also very fast. It only takes about 5 minutes to digest a metal rock that it ate. Zhenjin nodded and did not say anything else. When the jerboa and lizard's meat skewers were about ready, Zhenjin's expression suddenly changed and he tilted his head to listen. This action immediately alerted ZD and Sang-Soo. There's movement. Zhen Jin's expression darkened. ZD and Sang-Soo did not hear anything, but they knew that Zhen Jin was a battle energy cultivator. His body was far stronger than normal people. It was normal for him to hear some sound. You guys eat first. I'll go stand guard and chase away or kill any wild beasts that might be around. Try to stay where you are. Don't move. Zhen Jin reminded the two of them. After passing the meat skewers to them, he slowly stood up. Sir, you must be careful. ZD was extremely concerned. Zhen Jin nodded and quickly moved. His figure quickly disappeared into the night. He first circled around the area. After confirming that there were no traces of wild beasts, he quickly ran in a direction. Without carrying Baiya and without ZD and Sang-Soo slowing him down, Zhen Jin soon arrived at the gold stones. The gold stones were also very safe. There were no spear scorpions around. Zhen Jin took a deep breath. His face revealed a hint of hesitation. But soon, he made up his mind. He began to take off his clothes. Soon, he had taken off all his clothes and was completely naked. The next moment, he activated his core. His entire body emitted a red light. The rich red light covered his face and body, leaving only a red human silhouette. Then, the red human silhouette quickly collapsed like water and turned into a scorpion silhouette. The red light faded. Zhen Jin disappeared from his original position. Instead, he was replaced by a spear scorpion. Silver-ranked life force overflowed. Zhen Jin had turned into a spear scorpion leader. This was the first time he had completely transformed. There was no trace of a human on his body. This was actually very risky, but Zhen Jin had to do it. He was too hungry. He was at least a silver-ranked chi cultivator. The only two meat skewers were of no help at all. In fact, even if ZD ate all of them, she would not be full. So, Zhen Jin decided to use another method. The gold stones were not human food. In that case, he would try turning into a complete spear scorpion. Zhen Jin's perception at this moment changed drastically. To him, the curtain of night was no longer that deep. With the help of the spear scorpion's eyes, he could see very far in the dark. The spear scorpion did not only have one pair of eyes. The main eye was right in front of the scorpion's head, and the two pairs of auxiliary eyes were distributed on both sides of the spear scorpion's head. So, Zhen Jin's vision was very wide at this moment. The spear scorpion also had a good sense of smell. Zhen Jin immediately smelled a rich fragrance. He quickly found that this fragrance came from the gold stones around him. People could not smell anything from the gold stones. At most, it was the smell of stone or metal. But at this moment, Zhen Jin, who had turned into a spear scorpion, smelled a wonderful fragrance that he had never smelled before. This wonderful fragrance immediately tempted Zhen Jin to raise the scorpion tail behind him. The scorpion tail shot out like lightning and pierced through the gold stones. Zhen Jin used his giant pincer claws and the scorpion tail to smash the pockmarked gold stones into many pieces. The claws crushed these pieces and put them into the spear scorpion's mouth. Zhen Jin chewed. Oh! Delicious. It's like a chocolate-flavored cookie. The texture is crisp, and the final taste also has a touch of silkiness. Zhen Jin almost cried out. So to the spear scorpion, the gold stones were such a delicacy. The spear scorpion's taste system was completely different from a human's. Zhen Jin ate heartily and chewed continuously. He was very hungry. He ate 2 large pieces of gold stones in a row before he stopped. He laid on the ground in his spear scorpion form and did not move for a long time. He was sure that the gold stones in his body had been digested. A numb and itchy feeling began to spread throughout his body. What's going on? Zhen Jin felt that something was wrong. He had been paying attention to his internal organs, and digesting the gold stones was very smooth and thorough. Could it be? Zhen Jin's head suddenly flashed. He thought of what Sang-Soo had said before. The general idea was that the spear scorpion ate the gold stones and could absorb the metal in the stones to make its scorpion shell stronger. Zhenjin immediately swung his scorpion tail and stabbed the shell on his back. However, they were all part of Zhenjin's body. The scorpion tail and the scorpion shell were the same and could not cause any damage. Zhenjin activated his heart core and returned to his human form, but he kept the scorpion shell on his chest. Maybe it was because there was only a small piece of the scorpion shell left, but the numb and itchy feeling gathered in his chest and became extremely strong. Zhenjin's 5 fingers turned into spider blades and stabbed at his chest. The brand new spider blades were very sharp. They pierced through the scorpion shell and made many cuts. Instantly, the numb and itchy feeling that Zhenjin could not endure was mostly relieved. However, after a few breaths, the strange feeling became stronger again. Zhenjin looked at his chest and realized that the wound on the scorpion shell on his chest had mostly healed. Zhenjin's face was filled with joy, because he had proven that his guess was right. He immediately used the spider blades to stab his chest again. He poked again and again, poking out many small holes. The scorpion shell quickly healed again and again. The numb and itchy feeling gradually weakened and finally disappeared. Zhenjin touched his chest and realized that the newly grown scorpion shell was much stronger than before. This should be the reason why the silver spear scorpion chased after me. So it wanted to be beaten up and injured. I lured it to the gold hemp stones and let it eat again. Instead, I harmed myself. After realizing the truth, the joy on Zhenjin's face disappeared and was replaced by a helpless and bitter smile. Zhenjin did not stay for long. After eating his fill, he immediately rushed back. When he came back to the bonfire, he saw ZD and Sang-Soo. The jerboa and lizard meat skewers had been roasted long ago, but ZD and Sang-Soo did not eat them, even though they were very hungry. Sir, you eat. Lord Zhenjin, don't be unnecessarily modest. Only if you have enough stamina can you ensure everyone's safety, isn't that right? Even if we have enough stamina, we can't deal with ferocious magical beasts. Even though ZD and Sang-Soo were very hungry, they still tried their best to persuade Zhenjin to eat the 2 skewers. Zhenjin obviously refused. He was already full. Both sides pushed and gave in to each other, but this time, ZD and Sang-Soo's attitude was very firm. Zhenjin could only change his expression. I still have enough stamina. My body's condition is much better than the 2 of you. You have eaten too little food. If you don't eat this, you might not even make it through tonight. This firewood might not be able to last through the night. At this point, Zhenjin gazed at ZD affectionately. I said, I will protect you until the end of my life. Then, the youth looked at Sang-Soo. Old scholar, even if you don't want to rely on me, and don't want to be my subordinate, I will do my best to save you. I once swore an oath to do my best to save everyone, including you and Baiya. Do you want me to break my oath? Do you want my honor as a knight to be tarnished? Zhenjin's expression became very solemn. ZD and Sang-Soo both looked at Zhenjin. They felt as if his whole body was emitting a holy light. For a moment, both of their bodies and minds were shaken. They did not make a sound. Burp. At this moment, Zhenjin could not help but burp. Sang-Soo and ZD? Chapter 73. In the early morning, the temperature in the desert was still very low. Every time Sang-Soo breathed, he would bring out a cloud of white mist. As the old scholar walked, he stretched out his hands and grabbed the front of his robe so that the sheepskin robe would wrap him tighter. This sheepskin robe was obtained from the large-scale massacre of the mountain goats in the forest. The sheepskin robe was very rough, but Sang-Soo cherished it very much. He knew that it was this inconspicuous piece of clothing that had saved his old life last night. The dry wood burned out, and the bonfire was extinguished in the middle of the night. Without the fire to warm up, the four of them fell into the torment of the cold. Zhenjin and Zidi, Sang-Su and Baya hugged each other for warmth. Only then could they persevere. When the sky was just beginning to brighten, Zhenjin and the others set off again. Although their vision was still very dim, they had to move quickly to warm up their bodies. Sang-Su's lips were blue from the cold. Moving forward made his body generate heat, but it also stimulated his hunger. There was no food, and there was only a little water left. The future seemed to be like this dim world. Sang-Su began to miss the barbecued lizard that he ate last night. That was so delicious. I should have left some for now. Sigh. Zhenjin was still walking in front, carrying Baya on his back. Baya was still unconscious. Zidi also had a sheepskin robe, but it was covered by the apprentice's magic robe. She put on the hood, but her body was still shivering from the cold. But in the next moment, her pair of amethyst-like eyes suddenly lit up. Look! She suddenly pointed to the front. A few shadows gradually appeared in the desert in front of them. It was a few pieces of golden hemp stones that stood silently. Sang-Su laughed. It seems that my speculation last night was not wrong. The golden hemp stones are nearby, and we are back. You deserve to be called. Zhenjin praised, but she didn't feel strange in her heart. Just last night, he had already made a trip here. He put Baya down and said, "You guys stay here. I'll go investigate first." Sang-Su and Zidi had no objections. At this time, the gold hemp stones were not safe. The acid-green lizards rushed to the golden hemp stones and used the heat from the golden hemp stones to increase their body temperature and increase their mobility. The spear scorpions would appear here and break the golden hemp stones to satisfy their hunger. "Be careful, my lord," Zidi reminded him, her face full of concern. Zhenjin nodded. "I'll be back soon. If you have to move, use the pink potion to mark the route along the way." "I understand, sir." Zidi nodded repeatedly. Although Zhenjin was worried about the safety of the three of them, he had no choice but to act alone. Fortunately, as a pharmacist, Zidi was not completely helpless in the face of danger. If there really is danger, with such a short distance, I should be able to return quickly, right? Zhenjin could only comfort himself like this. Under the silent gaze of Sang-Su and Zidi, Zhenjin jogged and finally disappeared into the golden hemp stones. Hiss hiss hiss, as soon as Zhenjin stepped into the golden hemp stones, he heard the sound of a snake coming from deeper in. Zhenjin was delighted. He had encountered the acid-green lizards before and knew that this was the sound they made. As expected, when he followed the sound, he found dozens of acid-green lizards hiding in the golden hemp stones. Good, good! Zhenjin was overjoyed. The acid-green lizards had appeared. They had appeared at the perfect time. At this time, Zhenjin and the others had run out of food, so the lizards' meat had come at the perfect time. Some of the acid-green lizards were lying on their stomachs, resting on the surface of the golden hemp stones. Some were sitting on the ground, leaning on the stones with their thick backs, and their long tails were circling the golden hemp stones. There were also some that had their two front limbs on the stones and their hind limbs on the sand. Their heads were raised high, and their mouths were wide open, constantly hissing. The snake sound that Zhenjin heard was mainly made by this kind of lizard. There was no wind. There was no upper wind or lower wind. Zhenjin approached quietly, trying not to make any noise. He used the golden hemp stones to hide his body, ensuring that he was always out of the lizard's sight. Soon, the acid-green lizards at the periphery turned their heads and looked in Zhenjin's direction. The lizards' faces were full of vigilance. "We can't go any further." Sensing this, Zhenjin decisively stopped behind a golden hemp stone. He was a 16-year-old boy with a small body. At this time, he was curled up, so the lizards on the other side could not see him at all. But even if they could not see him, the lizards still had their sense of smell, taste, and instinct. Therefore, they sensed that something was wrong. Zhenjin calmed his breath and did not take the risk to poke his head out to observe. He hesitated for a moment, then took off all his clothes and became naked again. Compared to yesterday, his body's condition was much better. The wound on his left shoulder blade had scabbed over, and the other scars had obviously faded. Perhaps it was because he had a full meal last night that his body had been nourished and once again displayed a strong self-healing ability. Zhenjin activated his heart core and turned into a complete silver spear scorpion again. This time, the acid-green lizards noticed the flash of red light behind the golden hemp stone and were alarmed. Countless pairs of eyes stared at the golden hemp stone. The snakes hissed loudly. The next moment, the lizards saw a dark gold spear scorpion crawl out from behind the golden hemp stone. Its scorpion shell was thick and hard, and its pincers were as big as 2 shields. It was very mighty. The scorpion tail behind it was very long, with some elegance and coldness. The lizards immediately felt a strong threat and became even more restless. This was because a few days ago, the lizard community had been massacred by scorpions. More importantly, Zhenjin's silver rank life force was very strong at this moment. These lizards, who were at most iron rank, could feel the difference between their life force levels. Seeing Zhenjin slowly approaching, the lizards started to panic, and their hissing became louder and louder. They wanted to scare Zhenjin, and it was obvious that they were bluffing. Zhenjin felt very strange at this moment. He realized that his field of vision had become much lower, and his human form's field of vision was much higher than the spear scorpion's. However, his field of vision had become very wide. A human's eyes are at the front of the head, but the spear scorpion not only has the main eye in front, it also has 2 pairs of auxiliary eyes on both sides of its body. Zhenjin was trying his best to adapt to the life form of the spear scorpion. Everything was so new. Although this was the second time he had changed, the first time was in the middle of the night. Moreover, he was tortured by hunger at that time, and his main focus was on eating. Now that he had filled his stomach, he began to fully experience the unique life experience of the spear scorpion. Due to the sufficient light, Zhenjin realized that he could see further, and the colors of the things he saw were more vivid than the human eye. This meant that the spear scorpion's visual ability was better than Zhenjin's. Clang, clang. Zhenjin raised his commissary, and let the giant pincers open and close twice. The pincers collided with each other, and a dull sound of metal colliding was immediately heard. In the eyes of the lizards, this small action was no doubt a demonstration and a threat. The group of lizards became even more restless. Most of the lizards had already jumped onto the golden rock. They looked down and hissed at the golden needles. At the same time, the lizard crowns on their heads opened up like umbrellas, trying their best to show off their strong and huge bodies. The snake hissing reached its loudest, as if thousands of poisonous snakes had gathered there, and any existence that dared to offend them would be destroyed by them. Zhenjin stared at the lizards with several pairs of scorpion eyes, and at the same time, he looked at his pair of giant pincers. Humans had 2 hands and 10 fingers, but they never had giant pincers. Zhenjin looked at his pair of giant pincers, and felt how thick and sturdy they were. Now that I have these 2 shields, I can completely block the acid that's coming at me. I won't have to dodge left and right like before. If I'm careless, I'll be seriously injured. Zhenjin had witnessed the battle between the silver spear scorpion and the acid lizards with his own eyes. He knew that even the acid sprayed by the silver lizard leader would not be able to corrode the spear scorpion leader's shell. This gave him a strong sense of security, and at the same time, it was very interesting. If I clamp the lizard's neck or tail, will it break them directly? Zhenjin could not help but be eager to try when he thought of this. Come on, I'm not afraid of your acid anymore. Charge! After shouting in his heart, Zhenjin ran towards the group of lizards. The lizards were shocked. After all, they had yet to produce a leader. Without a silver leader to hold the line, it was like a pack of hyenas had encountered a lion. When the lion rushed over, it was not that the hyenas did not have the strength to fight back, but none of them could resist the lion head-on. When the two lizards at the front saw Zhenjin rushing over, they even jumped off the golden stone and fled. However, at this moment, Zhenjin fell onto the sand with a thud. His entire scorpion body was lying on the ground, and the bottom of his scorpion body was rubbing against the sand. Because the momentum was too strong, he slid forward for a distance. The acid lizards? At this moment, the snake's cries stopped. The two fleeing lizards also stood on the sand, looking back at Zhenjin with shock in their eyes. What did they see? A spear scorpion leader was tripped by him? Zhenjin felt his face burning. If he was still in his normal human form, his face would probably be red. He had never made such a low-level mistake. As a knight, he actually tripped over himself while charging. I'm not a real spear scorpion. This is my second mutation. Usually, according to my instincts, I can control the body of a spear scorpion. I can do it for a normal walk. But if I fight, I'll be flustered and my body won't be able to keep up with my consciousness and thoughts. A human only had 2 legs. A spear scorpion had 4 pairs of legs, not counting its chelicerae. Zhenjin was not used to it for a moment. When his 4 pairs of appendages were running, they made a mistake and tripped him. Looking at the spear scorpion that they tripped, the acid lizards did not move. They seemed to be thinking, this spear scorpion seems to be very stupid? For a moment, the scene fell into a strange stagnation. Suddenly, a black iron-level acid-green lizard with the most majestic body let out a sharp cry and charged at Zhenjin first. The surrounding lizards were also stimulated and charged over. For a moment, smoke and dust were everywhere. The lizards surrounded Zhenjin and attacked him from all directions. They stomped, ran, hit, bit with their teeth, swung their tails, and slapped him with their giant claws. Zhenjin was surrounded and attacked. He fought back as he was beaten. He was beaten many times and fought back very few times. The hard scorpion shell had a strong defense and withstood all kinds of attack. Zhenjin only fought back with his scorpion tail. Although the scorpion tail fought back very few times, every time it attacked, it would take away the life of a lizard. The lizards were powerful, but Zhenjin still had the upper hand. At first, the lizards saw that the spear scorpion was being beaten passively and could only move around on the spot. Their ferocity was stimulated even more. But gradually, they noticed that their companions were getting fewer and fewer. The lizards also felt that something was wrong. A black iron-level magical beast lizard's Adam's apple bulged. Then, it spat acid at Zhenjin. Zhenjin's vision was very wide. When the lizard spitting acid raised its head, he had already noticed it. As the acid approached, Zhenjin was not in a hurry. He moved his appendage to the side and raised his right chelicerae. The chelicerae were like a large umbrella blocking all the acid. Some of the acid still splashed on his body, but Zhenjin did not feel it at all. Back then, the silver spear scorpion could even block the acid of the lizard leader. Now, the acid spat out by these black iron-level and bronze-level lizards was no threat to Zhenjin at all. Moreover, unlike the silver-level lizard leader, the black iron-level and bronze-level lizards would fall into a state of mental exhaustion and weakness in their limbs for a period of time after spitting acid. Zhenjin stared at the lizard that had just spat acid. He took the initiative to attack. He advanced while being beaten. The black iron-level lizard that was the target turned and fled, but its speed was greatly reduced. It was no longer as majestic as before. After Zhenjin pulled some distance with difficulty, he suddenly stabbed out with his scorpion tail. The scorpion tail was very long, so its attack range was very wide. In the next moment, the scorpion tail accurately pierced through the black iron-level lizard's head, killing it directly. Zhenjin was not used to the spear scorpion's chelicerae and appendages, but he was very familiar with the scorpion tail. On one hand, it's not the first time I've used the scorpion tail. On the other hand, it's probably because I've cultivated my family's fighting skills. The 100 Needles Wind and other skills are mainly used for stabbing. Therefore, using the scorpion tail to attack is very suitable for me. Jin Zhen secretly evaluated in his heart. Although he was not used to the spear scorpion's life form and could not move as fast as flying in a short period of time, his solid and profound fighting skills allowed him to quickly exploit his strengths and avoid his weaknesses. He quickly found the most suitable fighting style for himself. The acid was the lizard's strongest weapon, but even it was ineffective. The lizard's defeat was already set in stone. After leaving behind the corpses of more than 10 lizards, the remaining lizards finally recognized the reality. They were terrified by Zhen Jin's killing and retreated in panic. "Don't run!" Jin Zhen shouted in his heart and immediately chased after him. This fierce battle had stimulated his instincts and trained him. He was no longer tripped by himself. The 4 pairs of appendages crawled alternately in a smooth and natural manner. They actually increased Zhen Jin's speed all of a sudden, but in the next moment, bang! Zhen Jin crashed into a golden stone. He still could not control the direction while running at high speed. The fierce momentum of the pursuit and charge just now came to an abrupt end. When the fleeing lizards saw this scene, they were stunned again. But immediately they continued to flee at an even faster speed. Chapter 74. Zhen Jin was only a little stuffy from the collision. The hard scorpion shell protected his brain, and he did not feel dizzy at all. If a normal person were to collide with the lizard at his speed just now, they would definitely end up with their heads broken and bleeding. Seeing that the lizards had run far away, Zhen Jin knew that he could not catch up with them. In addition, ZD, Tsang Su, and the others were still far away, so he gave up the chase. After this battle, Zhen Jin deeply understood one thing. The spear scorpion form is indeed very powerful, but I still need a lot of practice to fully unleash the spear scorpion's abilities. Right now, he couldn't even run normally. To be more precise, he couldn't even adjust his direction while running. Looking at the core again, a quarter of the magic energy in it had been consumed. Completely transforming into a spear scorpion consumed magic energy at a very fast rate, far more than before when he transformed into 1 or 2 parts. Zhen Jin was not in a hurry to remove this form. He moved his feet and crawled to the side of a lizard's corpse, stabbing the scorpion tail into the lizard's stomach. The next moment, he used his mind to mobilize the magic core in his heart. A familiar red light appeared, and 4 bloodlines appeared on the lizard's body. The bloodlines quickly wrapped around the lizard and tied it up. Then, the bloodlines sank into the lizard's body and became a little dimmer. But soon, the bloodlines became ruddy again and quickly shrank, withdrawing the lizard's bloodline essence into the core. The lizard's corpse turned into a pile of carbon powder. The magic energy reserves in the core rose a little. Now I can mutate the lizard's crown. Even if my whole body mutates, in this situation, I can still activate the magic core to absorb and transform the target's life form. After confirming this conjecture, Zhen Jin removed the spear scorpion form and returned to his human form. Next, he absorbed and transformed most of the lizard corpses in the field. These lizards had just died and were still very fresh, and most of the magic energy contained in them was still left, so each lizard transformed quite a lot of magic energy. Finally, Zhen Jin checked and found that the magic energy reserves in the core were half as high as before the battle. Now I can completely transform into this acid lizard, but only into black iron level. This result made Zhen Jin fall into deep thought. He had a new understanding of the magic crystal in his heart. It seems that the life form level I mutated is not based on my own life form level, but the life form level of the life form I absorb. I've absorbed a silver rank spear scorpion leader, so I can mutate a silver rank spear scorpion. But I didn't absorb enough silver ranked lizards. The highest level I absorbed was only iron ranked, so I could only mutate iron ranked lizards. However, after the silver lizard was killed, I disposed of its corpse and obtained a lot of lizard meat. After that, I ate a lot. Therefore, there is actually a quantitative accumulation in this. If I had only absorbed a small part of the silver spear scorpion's body, I wouldn't have been able to transform it into a complete silver-ranked spear scorpion. As the sun rose, the temperature in the desert began to rise significantly. Zhenjin stopped his train of thought and began to put on his clothes. Although a complete mutation is powerful, it's very inconvenient to have to take off my clothes every time. While putting on his clothes, Zhenjin saw the hole in the back of his pants, and an awkward expression appeared on his face. After putting on his clothes, he deliberately fiddled with his shirt so that the back of his shirt covered the hole in his buttock. He then picked up his saber and aimed at the remaining lizard carcass, cutting many wounds. This saber originally belonged to a member of the exploration team, who died in the volcanic cave. When Zhenjin carried Baiya on his back and left, he did not forget to take these precious survival supplies with him. This was just an ordinary saber made of iron, and its sharpness was far inferior to the spider blade. A normal person would have to continuously slash it several times before they could break through the black iron lizard's skin. Zhenjin then swept away any suspicious traces on the battlefield and buried all the carbon powder. After a final check, he walked out of the range of the gold stones and jogged all the way to Tsangsu and ZD. Seeing Zhenjin's tired face and the bloodstains on his body, ZD was very concerned and quickly went forward to check. After confirming that Zhenjin had no wounds, the girl exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. There were a few lizards and I killed them. I chased the rest away and now we have food, Zhenjin said with a smile. This good news made Tsangsu and ZD beam with joy. Zhenjin carried Baiya on his back and hurried back to the gold stones with the two of them. Seeing a total of 5 lizard carcasses, Tsangsu and ZD revealed a shocked expression. Tsangsu scanned the battlefield again and saw the messy traces of fighting on the sand, as well as the many lizard footprints that stretched out. He let out a heartfelt sigh of admiration. Lord Zhenjin, now I'm beginning to believe Lady ZD's guess. I'm afraid that you're not just a silver-level cultivator. It's very unusual that you can still have such powerful battle strength when your physical strength is so poor. There were at least 30 lizards in this group, but you relied on an ordinary sword and didn't use any fighting spirit to kill 5 of them, and even forced the whole group to flee. My lord, you're so brave. But what this old man admires even more is your brave and fearless spirit. You charged alone into a huge group of magical beasts, not fearing a strong enemy. Such a scene and action, if placed in the history books, would be one of those famous lone heroes. Although I didn't see it with my own eyes, but I can imagine the heroic scene of you charging alone into these lizards. Those lizards surrounded you, but you relied on your extraordinary courage and exquisite battle skills to fight bravely. Those lizards spat acid, but you were in danger, but your willpower was extraordinary, and you maintained an icy calm. An ordinary sword in your hands could cause waves of blood. You moved and dodged among the lizards, heroic and exquisite, just like an elf dancing in the forest. Zhenjin touched his nose, a little embarrassed by the praise. You flatter me. No. Tsangsu shook his head, his attitude was very firm. Although I'm not good at fighting, I'm still at this age. These traces on the battlefield can't be fake. A large part of these battle traces were forged by Zhenjin. Seeing that Tsangsu was successfully deceived by him, Zhenjin was a little relieved, but also a little ashamed. I had to do this lizard meat is enough for us to eat for a long time. ZD seemed to be frightened by Tsangsu's description. Her purple eyes stared at Jinjin and she said softly, "My lord, please don't take such risks in the future. Many times we can take the long view." Jinjin nodded. "Don't worry, I know what to do. In fact, ever since I got rid of the scorpions I felt like I had been reborn. I seem to have broken through something, but it also seems like I haven't. Now, when I fight, my thoughts are clearer than before, and I understand the state of my body better. I know what I can do and what I can't do." Needlework said this after careful consideration. He wanted to pave the way for something. He deliberately said it vaguely, to leave some impressions on the people around him. In the future, after he used the heart core to resolve the threat, others would not feel that his strength was strange and abrupt. Sang-Soo heard this and nodded repeatedly. "I've heard a little about your situation. In the east of the empire, there is a group of Qi cultivators who advocate bitter cultivation. When they cultivate, they take the initiative to wear anti-magic rings, heavy weights, and the simplest clothes. They either tread barefoot in the mountains, or sit cross-legged under a waterfall, enduring the impact of tens of thousands of tons of water. They imprison most of their strength, putting their bodies in the most difficult environment at all times, using this to torture their bodies and temper their spirit and will. Often, their Qi cultivation is able to break through the limit and grow rapidly. In the end, Qi is extracted from the human body and squeezed out power. The stronger the human body, the higher the limit of the body, the more potential is squeezed out, and the stronger the Qi. The human body was the foundation of Qi, but magic was different. The essence of magic was to pry open the external element. The essence of divine arts was the divine power that the gods took the initiative to lend. Master Jinjin, your experience on the island is like the experience of these painstakingly cultivated strongmen. At the juncture of life and death, your body broke through the limit and unearthed the hidden potential. It is very likely that when you leave this island, your Qi cultivation will take another step." Sang-Soo spoke with conviction, and as the person involved, Zhen Jin was a little confused. He did not expect that he had just started, and Sang-Soo had already given him a perfect explanation. Zhen Jin reacted, and he could not help but admire Sang-Soo even more. If I had such a retainer or subordinate, how much easier it would be to deal with affairs in the future. Unfortunately, Sang-Soo is just an ordinary person. If he could cultivate, it would be perfect. As for Sang-Soo's identity as a wanted criminal, Zhen Jin did not care. Because only the Sand Tower clan wanted Sang-Soo. The Hundred Needles clan and the Sand Tower clan's territories were far apart, and they had already taken refuge in the Xingming Emperor's faction. Protecting an ordinary person like Sang-Soo, the Sand Tower clan could not do anything to Zhen Jin. Immediately, the three of them began to dispose of the lizard's body, cutting it into strips of meat. Although there was meat, everyone did not eat a big meal. Although the food was sufficient, it was still not unlimited. After being tortured by hunger this time, Zhen Jin and the others cherished every piece of food very much. After counting the amount of lizard meat, they already had a detailed plan, how much meat each person would eat every day. Another important reason why they did not eat a big meal was that there was very little water left. The human stomach did not store water, but a lot of water was needed to digest food. The water in the human body penetrated the stomach to participate in digestion. Under the condition of a lack of water, eating a lot of meat could be fatal. Next, we need to replenish the drinking water. ZD said. If we can't find water, even if we don't starve to death, we will die of thirst. However, I believe that there must be a stable and large-scale water source nearby. Sang-Soo said with a firm tone. There were scorpions and lizards living here. The two groups were very large, and a lot of water was an essential resource to maintain life, unless they were also transported here. However, all the signs indicated that this possibility did not exist. These two groups of beasts had been living here for a long time. We can observe the lizard's footprints, Maybe these traces can lead us to a water source. Sang-Soo made a good suggestion. In the evening, the sunset on the horizon was like a burning satin. The afterglow of the setting sun shone on Zidi's face, and her pair of amethyst-like eyes suddenly sparkled. Look, the oasis is over there. The girl who climbed the sand dune excitedly pointed in front of her. Zhenjin had already seen and sensed it. At this moment, with Baiya on his back, he sighed and said, "Sure enough, we found it." The traces of Lizard's activity gave them a lot of clues. Sang-Soo was the last to reach the top of the sand dune. He looked into the distance and gasped for breath. Yes, that should be the oasis. But we also have to be careful of the mirage. A mirage can cause a great psychological drop. Many people who survive in the desert fall into despair because of this and give up on survival. As they got closer, the scenery of the oasis became clearer. ZD saw tall and green coconut trees, and she also heard the fiery red mirror of the lake under the setting sun. "All of this is real, this is not an illusion," the girl shouted. The problem of water was solved perfectly. Zhenjin and Sang-Soo's faces were filled with joy. But Zhenjin was still calm and reminded them, "Be careful, the oasis provides a steady supply of water and food, there must be other life forms that visit it. We can't be careless." Sang-Soo looked at Zhenjin and praised him in his heart. After going through so many hardships, this young knight's growth is not only his combat strength. They officially entered the oasis. "Wait, there are footprints here. And these footprints are very new," Zhenjin whispered. He had the strongest vision and was the first to discover the abnormality. "So, there are people in this oasis? Who could it be?" ZD and Sang-Soo looked at each other and became alert. Chapter 75. Following the footprints, they carefully moved forward and soon found something. "Lan Zhao, it's you? You're still alive. What happened to you?" When Sang-Soo saw Lan Zhao, he almost couldn't believe his eyes. In his impression, Lan Zhao was a strong and steady middle-aged man. He had a strong will and was always vigilant. But now, Lan Zhao had lost a lot of weight. His hair was unkempt and his face was covered in blood. He was like a puppet, sitting blankly in the lush grass, completely defenseless. When he heard someone call his name, he slowly turned his head sideways. His face was dazed and sluggish. Zidi's heart sank. She secretly guessed. Could it be that he was attacked by some magical beast, causing his soul to be damaged and turning him into a retard? The moment they found Lan Zhao, everyone was happy. They didn't know that Lan Zhao and Huang Zhao had secretly retreated and left him in the lurch. In the eyes of Zhenjin and the others, Lan Zhao had been separated from them in the sandstorm. Being able to meet up with Lan Zhao at the oasis was naturally a pleasant surprise. But this joy was like a gust of wind. It quickly dissipated along with Lan Zhao's mental state, and was replaced by uncertainty. "Lan Zhao, is there anyone else besides you? Where's your brother Huang Zhao?" Zhenjin asked. Hearing the name Huang Zhao, Lan Zhao suddenly trembled, like a magic statue that had been activated by a password. He was stunned. Soon after, the expression on his face changed dramatically, as if he had suddenly recovered all his memories. He was extremely anxious, flustered, and nervous as he shouted, "My lord, Lord Zhenjin, you've come? Quickly save my brother, quickly save him." As he spoke, he threw himself at Zhenjin's feet and hugged Zhenjin's calf. When he saw ZD again, it was as if he had seen her for the first time. He shouted in surprise, "Miss ZD, it's great that you're here too. With you around, you'll definitely be able to cure my brother." "What happened?" "Calm down, Lan Zhao." Zhenjin frowned. He leaned over and grabbed Lan Zhao's shoulder, lifting him up. "Quick, come here." Lan Zhao suddenly broke free from Zhenjin's grasp, turned around and ran towards the nearest coconut tree. After running a few steps, He tripped on the grass and fell to his knees. He was extremely anxious. He used both his hands and feet to crawl and run, leading the way in front. The situation is very strange, but they can't get anything out of it. Zhenjin and others raise their spirits and follow the blue-green algae. When they reached the coconut tree, Zhenjin, who was walking in front, narrowed his eyes. He saw Huang Zhao in the grass. Huang Zhao's clothes were very tattered. Most of his flesh was gone. His pale ribs, arm bones, and leg bones were exposed. He lay motionless on the ground. The remaining half of his body had already started to rot and began to emit a foul stench. Huang Zhao was already dead. Now he was a complete corpse. But the strange thing was that the corpse was still bandaged. The bandages were obviously long strips of cloth made from torn clothes, and they were also covered with many huge coconut tree leaves. "Brother, brother, quickly open your eyes! Look, Lord Zhenjin is here. Miss ZD is also here. You're saved, you're saved. You're really lucky. You fell into the desert, but you still managed to meet the two lords." Lan Zhao knelt beside Huang Zhao. He used his arm to support the back of Huang Zhao's head so that the latter's upper body could be straightened. It had to be said that this was a horrifying scene. Huang Zhao was already dead. His face was pale and his body was broken. The bloodstains and white bones were a shocking sight. Sang Su and ZD, who came later, saw this scene and suddenly stopped in their tracks. ZD was caught off guard and immediately retched. She almost vomited out the acid in her stomach. Huang Zhao. Sang Su's eyes widened behind the broken lenses. He's dead. When did he die? How did he die? Lan Zhao was shocked. He shook his head frantically and refuted. No, he's fine. He's not dead. He's still alive. Sang Su, you're old and blind. Look carefully again. Then, Lan Zhao looked at his brother and suddenly lowered his voice. Brother, quickly wake up. Open your eyes and look. Huang Zhao was already deader than dead. How could he open his eyes? Lan Zhao stared at Huang Zhao's face closely. When he saw that the latter had no reaction, he gradually became anxious. Brother, brother, open your eyes and look. Quickly open your eyes and look. Lan Zhao began to go crazy. He stretched out his right hand and pushed open Huang Zhao's eyelids, revealing the white of his eyes. Look, look. He opened his eyes. My brother opened his eyes. Cyanobacteria shouted happily. ZD and Zhenjin were silent. Sang Su shook his head and sighed deeply. Lan Zhao, wake up. Your brother is indeed dead. No, he's not dead. He's not dead. You're lying. You're lying. Cyanobacteria roared and became hysterical. He placed his ear on Huang Zhao's right chest. Half of it was flesh and the other half was bone. His heart had already disappeared. Listen, he still has a heartbeat. Lan Zhao's face was suddenly filled with joy. Everyone was silent. Lan Zhao looked at everyone's expressions and became extremely anxious. He stretched out his finger and placed it under Huang Zhao's nose. Look, he's still breathing. Lan Zhao shouted. Everyone was still silent. Lan Zhao shouted at everyone. He's still alive. His shout was very loud. This was Lan Zhao's shout with all his might. It shook everyone's eardrums. Everyone stood in place, motionless like three iron men. He's still alive. Lan Zhao half knelt on the ground, his arm wrapped around Huang Zhao's corpse. He opened his eyes wide and shouted at everyone again. But his shout was only half of his previous volume. Cyanobacteria's eyes were bloodshot. Tears streamed down her face, leaving 2 streaks of tears. He's still alive, he's still alive, Lan Zhao shouted in a low voice. He seemed to be proving this point to everyone, but also seemed to be calling out to Huang Zhao. This strong man's upright upper body bent down. He slowly lowered his head and buried his head deep into Huang Zhao's broken chest. The sun had already sunk below the horizon. The last ray of light was gone. Everything was in darkness. Lan Zeo's cries drifted in the oasis. He wept and told. It's me, it's me, it's me who killed him, it's me. It's me. Whoa, these days. I'm alive, but he's dead. I'm the murderer, I'm the murderer. I'm sorry, little brother. I'm sorry, mother. I didn't take good care of him. I deserve to die, I really deserve to die. Whoa, it was hard to imagine that a strong man could cry so miserably. Her cries were like ghosts floating on the surface of a calm lake. The starry night sky was still bright. The temperature in the oasis was much more normal than the outside world. It was not as cold as the desert at night. There was also a bonfire. The orange-red flames burned quietly, occasionally emitting the crackling sound of wood cracking. Every time there was a sound, there would be a small spark of flame that quickly dissipated in the air. There was a wooden rack above the bonfire. Lizard meat skewers were being cooked. There were several coconuts beside Zhenjin and the others. There were many coconut trees in the oasis. There were two types of coconut trees. One type produced coconut fruits and the other produced date palms. Using a knife to cut open the coconut shell, there was fresh and delicious coconut juice, but it had a clear smell of sulfur. The problem of water was solved in a better way. It was much better than expected. Zhenjin and the others now not only had lake water, but also fruit juice. Of course, because it was late at night, the situation by the lake could not be ascertained. To be on the safe side, Zhenjin and the others did not rush to fetch water. Not far away, Lan Zeo was half kneeling in the grass. His eyes were dull, only staring at Huang Zeo's corpse. He did not respond to the barbecued meat's fragrance or the calls of Zhenjin and the others. He was like a puppet. Apart from being able to breathe, he seemed to be dead. Baiyu was lying next to the bonfire. His eyes were closed and he was unconscious. He still had a fever, and his temperature was getting higher and higher. It was obvious that his condition was worsening. Perhaps when the next day came, these two people would become corpses. The firelight reflected on the faces of Zhenjin, Zidi, and Sangsu. Zidi glanced in the direction of Lan Zeo, and then her eyes moved to Zhenjin. The girl took the initiative to break the long silence. Sir, this kind of person cannot be left alive. There are many marks on Huang Zeo's corpse. How can we leave him alive? I also found that Lan Zeo's back seems to have been sprayed with acid. The wound is rotten, but it is obvious that it has been treated and bandaged before. This is obviously done by Huang Zeo, but Lan Zeo could not have done this with the wound on his back. Huang Zeo helped his brother and carefully bandaged Lan Zeo's wound. Zhenjin did not respond. His eyes were still fixed on the bonfire in front of him. Sangsu spoke at this time. I have a question. Since Lan Zeo has already arrived at the oasis, there is plenty of food, and he has weapons on him. Even if he can't hunt wild beasts, there are still coconut fruits on the ground. Zidi immediately replied, It's obvious that he just rushed here. Lan Zeo was able to last until here. Perhaps it is because he came to the oasis that Lan Zeo fell into endless regret and pain. Because he understands. Sangsu nodded. Sir Zidi's guess is very reasonable. Therefore, Sir Zidi also believes that Lan Zeo fell into this state because of regret and pain. In other words, Lan Zeo is suffering from the torture of his kindness, morality, and familial love. Is that so? Zidi immediately frowned. She slightly glared at Sangsu. What do you mean? Are you trying to absolve a person who killed his own brother? Sangsu shook his head repeatedly. Sir Zidi, you misunderstood me. I don't want to absolve anyone. No matter what kind of person Lan Zeo is, he still killed his own brother. He is a murderer. At this point, Sangsu looked at Zhenjin again. I just want to clarify some of the shallow and perhaps narrow truths that I know. Zhenjin's interest was piqued. He said expressionlessly, Scholar Tsang-su, please speak without reserve. Tsang-su smiled slightly and threw a piece of firewood into the bonfire. We humans are actually very weak. Compared to wild beasts, we don't have sharp claws, hard shells, wings to fly, or gills to breathe in water. Moreover, the intelligence that we are so proud of is actually not exclusive to us. Elves, beastmen, demons, angels, goblins, and so on all have intelligence that is not inferior to ours, or even superior to ours. In today's world, we humans are the strongest in terms of overall strength. But if we look back at history, we will find that our ancestors were always at a disadvantage, struggling to survive in the midst of danger. The prosperity of the human race, and its rise to the top, was only a change in the last few hundred years. So, a long time ago, when our ancestors ate raw meat, drank blood, and lived in nature without clothes, our ancestors discovered an important point. As individuals, we are too weak. Only by helping each other and borrowing each other's strength can we have a higher chance of survival. Gradually, the earliest human tribes were born, followed by families, and then the embryonic form of a country. Now, we humans have built a powerful empire that rules the entire human continent. And in this process, we developed ethics and morality. We worship the strong because we can survive by relying on the strong. We recognize the nobility brought by bloodlines because excellent bloodlines are more likely to be able to cultivate the strong. We have the concept of community, sacrifice, and honor. We despise selfishness, we advocate sharing, and we don't want to be ostracized by the collective. This is because individuals are too weak. Being recognized by others in the collective is more beneficial to the individual's survival. However, in reality, selfishness is the first instinct of life. The emergence of ethics and morality came after selfishness. Fundamentally, ethics and morality are also due to the selfishness of life. Just like sharing, the essence is to exchange conditions that are more beneficial to one's survival. Just like how we despise selfishness because we don't want others to be selfish. This is not beneficial to our own survival. We help others because helping others allows us to survive better in the group. Surviving alone will reduce our survival and reproduction rate. It will make it more difficult for our bloodline to be passed down, regardless of whether it is high or low. Enough! ZD shouted in a low voice. She stared at Tsang-su, her gaze penetrating the bonfire between them with anger. Scholar Tsang-su, are you trying to say that it is because of the instinct to survive? You are not only exculpating Lan Zhao, you are also exculpating yourself. Tsang-su did not stop because of ZD's interruption. At this moment, he showed a rare toughness. His gaze was focused on Zhen Jin's face. Yes. The strong male lion chases away the old lion and becomes the new leader of the pride. It will do its best to guard its territory and show off its strength. It would let the lionesses go out to hunt for food for it, and it would kill all the cubs of the old lion. They will not have the morals of respecting the old and loving the young. These words are harsh to the ears, my lord. Tsang-su sighed bitterly. His gaze was sincere and sorrowful. But this is... Chapter 76. Ah! Don't come over, don't come over! ZD fled in panic. Zhen Jin chased after the girl. So hungry, I'm so hungry! Zhen Jin had completely transformed into a silver spear scorpion. He had been defeated by hunger, and his mind was filled with thoughts of eating. ZD was finally forced to the bottom of the cave, tripping over a rock and falling to the ground. Zhen Jin pounced on her, his huge chelicerae and sharp scorpion tail fiercely moving. Poochie! ZD was dismembered in an instant. Blood splattered, dyeing the bottom of the cave red, and also dyeing Zhen Jin's vision red. The next moment, Zhen Jin suddenly opened his eyes. He saw the dark night sky. He gasped for breath, cold air filling his chest and lungs. His pupils gradually expanded to normal size, and his mood gradually calmed down. A nightmare. He had a nightmare. In this nightmare, he became a spear scorpion and attacked ZD, treating the girl as food to satisfy his hunger. Zhenjin quietly sat up. He broke out in a cold sweat. Looking around, ZD was sleeping soundly beside him, while Bai Ye and Lan Zhao were lying not far away. After hearing Tsang Su's words, Zhen Jin knocked Lan Zhao unconscious and put him down. As for Tsang Su, he was responsible for keeping watch for the second half of the night. The bonfire was still burning quietly. The flame was half of what it was before, but it still provided a steady stream of warmth. The light of the fire shone on Zhen Jin's face. The young knight's expression was uncertain. Why would I have such a nightmare? Is it because I've always been worried and afraid of the magic crystal in my heart? This was a very normal psychological reaction. Imagine a normal person suddenly growing horns, or a tail, or lumps all over their body. How could they not be worried and afraid? No one would have a magic core, but Zhen Jin had managed to grow one. Moreover, this demon core was extremely mysterious, strange, and powerful. It could turn Zhen Jin into a monster and absorb the bloodline of living beings. I can't use my doqi. If I encounter danger, I can only use it. Sigh. It's best if I don't use it in the future. Who knows what serious consequences there will be? Zhen Jin subconsciously touched his chest. He was afraid that if he misused the magic core, he would one day turn into a monster and never regain his human form. Zhen Jin felt that this magic crystal had already begun to tempt him, tempting him to slaughter the common people and sacrifice the innocent in order to obtain greater power and authority. On the other hand, I'm also afraid that I'll become Lan Zhao. Zhen Jin glanced at Lan Zhao in the distance. To be honest, he could empathize with Lan Zhao. And this kind of understanding was very profound. Because Zhen Jin had once faced the same choice as Lan Zhao. Hunger could drive people crazy. Hunger could turn Zhen Jin into a spear scorpion to steal gold stones. It could make ZD feel that cooled lava was like burnt chocolate bread. It could make Tsang Su want to grab a handful of sand and eat it. It could make them not let go of anything that could be eaten. It could make them feel that jumping rat meat and lizard meat were the most delicious. In addition to understanding, Zhen Jin also felt fear and lingering fear. If I had chosen to treat Bai Ye as food, would I have ended up like Lan Zhao? Although Bai Ye is not my biological brother, I will always be tortured and interrogated by the kindness, morality, and honor of a knight. I will be like Lan Zhao, living a life worse than death. Zhen Jin's heart was very heavy. Because he naturally thought, in the future, will I become such a person? When he returned to the volcano cave and carried Bai Ye on his back, the young knight told himself, I have not fallen. However, he was very clear, he had many thoughts. Those thoughts were selfish, evil, shameless, and despicable. They made Zhen Jin almost unable to face himself afterwards. In addition to understanding, fear, and heaviness, Zhen Jin also felt a sense of pity for Lan Zhao. In order to survive, he became a beast. He killed his own brother. After that, he came to this oasis. This kind of arrangement was simply a joke and a mockery of fate. Lan Zhao regretted it. Perhaps if he had discovered the oasis earlier, perhaps if he had held on a little longer, Huang Zhao would not have died. Extreme regret made him unable to believe that Huang Zhao had died. He desperately denied the fact that he had killed his own brother. Even if his vision was normal, he still believed that Huang Zhao was still alive and that there was still hope to save him. He lied to himself, he did his best to lie to himself. He fell into his own fantasy. Only in this way could he escape the condemnation of his conscience and the torment of his morals. This oasis is real, but he has fallen into his own mirage. However, everything is just a fantasy in the end. Our appearance and attitude burst the bubble of his fantasy. The ruthless reality and the truth were placed in front of Lan Zhao again. And this time, he could no longer avoid it. He could no longer lie to himself. Just like what Sang Su said before, people who survive in the desert will collapse because of a mirage. Lan Zhao is the same, and the situation is even worse. Frankly speaking, if Zhen Jin did not experience life and death, he would also despise, loathe, and hate the current Lan Zhao. It was very likely that he would have taken Zidi's advice. However, after experiencing so much, the young knight's body and mind had undergone tremendous changes. He is our companion. I once said that I would do my best to save everyone, so I will help him. This was the decision Zhen Jin made by the campfire when he was faced with the two completely different suggestions from Sang Su and Zidi. Then, he got up and put half a bowl of coconut water and barbecued meat in front of Lan Zhao. Lan Zhao did not react at all. He was still staring blankly at Huang Zhao's corpse. In the end, Zhen Jin could only knock Lan Zhao unconscious. Why did he make such a decision to help Lan Zhao? Zhen Jin also felt that it was strange at the time. But now, he understood a little. Maybe it's because of a desire in my heart. I hope that if one day I fall into Lan Zhao's situation, there will be outsiders who can help me. However, Zhen Jin knew very well that he could not really help Lan Zhao. Lan Zhao's problem did not lie on the outside, but on the inside. Zhen Jin even doubted and asked himself whether he should help a person like Lan Zhao. Human society had ethics and morals, so the ethics and morals of the Knights Templar must be above the standards of the public. Lan Zhao's behavior was undoubtedly anti-moral and anti-ethical. Am I right to help a person like Lan Zhao? Am I helping him because I see myself in him? Am I making excuses for my possible depravity? At this moment, looking at the swaying flame, Zhen Jin felt that he was hesitating and wavering. He had gained initial control of the magic crystal in his heart and became very powerful. He had enough food and water, so he was able to get rid of this crisis. But the young knight felt that he was weak. He asked himself in his heart, "What kind of person am I? I am afraid of death. Can I continue to uphold the spirit of a knight? Can I shoulder the responsibility of my family? Am I a selfish person? If I were in Lan Zhao's situation, what would I choose? If I choose not to eat, then I will lose my life and will not be able to reach the oasis. If I choose to eat, then I will live a life worse than death. Which choice is the right one?" Zhen Jin faced himself bravely. He did not use the magic crystal as an excuse to avoid his true self. Zhen Jin could not answer his own question. Every time he thought, every time he faced these questions, every time his soul was tortured, he lost a part of his strong self-confidence, and then another part. Zhen Jin was very clear. When he saved Bai Ye, he told himself that he was not depraved. This was actually just a subconscious denial. Who did not want to be brave? Who did not want to be honorable? Who did not want to be upright, without any moral shortcomings? However, Sang Su's words are not without reason. Zhen Jin was really thinking. This kind of thinking forced him to face the ugliness and darkness in the deepest part of his human nature. This was undoubtedly very painful. Losing confidence in himself, Zhen Jin fell into deep self-doubt at the same time. Beside the bonfire in the middle of the night, the young knight quietly got up and half knelt on the ground. He lowered his head, covered his heart with his hand, faced the direction of the Xingming continent, and began to repent. "God, Xingming Emperor, my great lord. Under your gaze, the world is bright, and the shadows flee in panic. Now, your believer, your knight repents to you, because I have fallen into the mire of my soul. Please shine your light on me, and let my corruption, ugliness, filth, and filth fade away. I beseech you to forgive me for the sins of my thoughts." The long confession ended. The gentle night wind blew in the young knight's ears. Everything was within Zhen Jin's expectations. God did not respond. The young knight sighed in disappointment. ZD was sleeping soundly. Baya was lying flat on the grass, and Lan Zhao was curled up on the ground like a shrimp. Both of them were frowning, and their expressions were painful. They were both struggling. Time passed, and the night gradually faded. The sun rose, casting a scorching light. Just like the countless days and nights before, nature still operated in an unchanging pattern. Any feelings of distress, sadness, pain, confusion, and so on seemed pretentious in this vast nature. The world was big, but living was the most important. Before wealth, power, beauty, and honor, there must be food and water. No matter how painful, how confused, how sad, life still had to go on. Chapter 77. The next day, Zhen Jin prioritized exploring the entire oasis. The environment in the oasis was unexpectedly peaceful and quiet. The footprints by the lake were basically spear scorpions and acid lizard. This made it easy to speculate that there were only two large groups of spear scorpions and lizards near the oasis. The lake water could not be explored, so they did not know what was hidden in the lake. However, according to the traces left by the beasts by the lake, there did not seem to be any signs of fighting. This might mean that there was no threat hidden in the lake. There were many small creatures. For example, small lizards, normal scorpions, spiders, and jerboas. Occasionally, a bird would land on a certain coconut tree in the sky. After everyone discussed, Zhen Jin began to cut down these thick coconut trees. After plucking all the coconuts, he still had to process the tree trunks, chop them into dry wood, and use the tree core to make the body of the short bough. ZD, on the other hand, was concocting potions. Compared to the barren desert, the oasis contained much more resources. Sang Su was in charge of making the hemp rope. Until now, there were only 5 people left in the exploration team. 2 of them could not even walk on their own. Among the remaining 3, Sang Su was old, and ZD was only a 15-year-old girl. Therefore, the labor force was reduced sharply. Fortunately, there were not many exploration team members, and there were not many things needed. After a morning, Zhen Jin had already made 5 short bows. ZD finished the preliminary grinding process, and began to test the medicinal properties of the various materials. In the afternoon, Zhen Jin went to the lake to dig deep, and obtained a lot of soil. Using the soil and fire, Sang Su began to make clay pot. In the evening, Zhen Jin stopped cutting down the coconut trees. Instead, he climbed to the top of the coconut trees to pick the coconut. The coconut shell was very hard. Even if it fell to the ground, as long as it did not hit a rock, it would be intact. Zhen Jin also picked a lot of palm leaves. Like the coconuts, whether it was the palm leaves or the coconut tree itself, they all emitted a strange smell of sulfur. With ZD's potion, the first clay pot was made. During dinner, a pot of hot water was successfully boiled out of the clay pot on the fire. Drinking hot water and eating barbecued meat, Zhen Jin and the others felt a strong sense of happiness. "This is the ultimate enjoyment in the world," ZD exclaimed from the bottom of her heart. Morning of the 3rd day. Whoosh! A wooden arrow flew out, and a bird on the crown of the coconut tree was frightened and flew away. Zhen Jin sighed under the tree. Although the first short bow has been completed, I'm not good at adjusting the bow, and the arrow's accuracy is terrible. Zhen Jin stretched his left shoulder a little. The injury from before had mostly recovered, and it would no longer affect his archery. Looking at the bird flying away, Zhen Jin took out a wooden dart and threw it out based on his intuition. The moment he threw it, Zhen Jin activated his heart core and turned his arm into a bear's arm. Then, almost instantly, the mutation was cancelled. The speed of the dart was astonishing. Like a bolt of lightning, it swiftly and accurately hit the flying bird and fell to the ground with it. Zhen Jin walked over and picked up the bird's body. The wooden dart was deeply embedded in the bird's chest. Only the tail of the dart was left in the bird's body, and it almost flew out. Bird meat was no longer precious, and there was still a lot of lizard meat. But bird feathers were very important. They were the source of material for arrow feathers. Bird bones were also useful. Last night, Zhenjin told himself not to use the heart core as much as possible. But without bird feathers, there was no way to make qualified arrows. In addition, the number of birds in the oasis was very low, and it was completely incomparable to the forest and rainforest. So, Zhenjin could not easily let go of any bird. Carrying the bird, Zhenjin returned to the original place and found a brand new basket made of rattan. The basket was filled with mud from the lake. Breakfast had already been eaten, and Zhenjin's original goal was to dig up the mud and transport it back in the basket. When he saw a bird on the way back, the young knight did not let it go and killed it directly. Carrying the bird in one hand and the basket in the other, Zhenjin returned to the temporary camp. ZD was setting up a tent in the camp. This kind of tent was very simple. The framework was a stable triangular structure built with a few slender wooden strips, and then the surface was covered with palm leaves. Then, the palm leaves and the wooden strips were tied together with rattan or hemp rope. The wide palm leaves were stacked on top of each other, and the ground of the tent was covered with fluffy hay, successfully creating a warm and wind-proof private resting place. It was estimated that 5 such small tents would be built. Zhenjin, Song-su, and the others would each have one. ZD had already built one and was building the second one. At this rate, no one would be sleeping in the open tonight. There's an unexpected gain. Zhenjin handed the bird to ZD. ZD looked up and smiled at Zhenjin. Just put it on the ground. Here, this is the medicine I made. It has almost no smell, but it can repel mosquitoes and poisonous ants. Zhenjin took the medicine and checked the situation of Bai Ye and Lan Zhao. The two of them were lying motionless on the grass, not far from each other. Zhenjin bent down and touched Bai Ye's forehead. He found that his fever had subsided, and his breathing was steadier than before. This was a good sign. Zhenjin was slightly happy. Bai Ye was better at adjusting the bow than he was, but he could not count on him for now. I hope he wakes up soon, Zhenjin silently wished in his heart. If Bai Ye woke up, he would need to be fed water, and he would be able to eat on his own. He would eat more than now, and his intake of nutrients would be more beneficial for his recovery. As for Lan Zhao, he had already woken up. He was curled up on the ground, still motionless. His expression was dull, and his eyes were numb like a lifelike puppet. He was a bronze-ranked Do-Chi cultivator, and his body was much stronger than Bai Ye's. But his mental state was not good, and he had no interest in the food placed in front of him. Zhenjin sighed softly. The young knight was not good at persuasion and comfort, and more importantly, his feelings towards Lan Zhao, who killed his own brother to survive, were very complicated. Even Zhenjin felt a faint fear towards the act of persuading Lan Zhao. Was this a form of forgiveness and connivance towards his own darkness? If he continued to connive, would there be no bottom line? Would he allow the core to corrode his heart? Would the noble knight of the temple cease to exist, and be replaced by a dark and depraved evil follower? Zhenjin carried the basket of soil and walked out of the temporary camp, arriving at a nearby open space. This place was originally a grassland, with lush grass that was taller than a person's knee, but now the grass was all burned. A fire pit had been dug out in the open space, and Song-su was using moist soil to cover the fire pit. The building he had built was already in its embryonic form, like a towering cylinder surrounding the fire pit. This is the earthen kiln. The firewood is burned underground, and this is the grate. It is divided into 2 layers, and the firewood is burned in the lower layer. This kind of structure allows air to flow in faster, and makes the fire burn brighter. Song-su explained. The height of the earthen kiln did not reach Zhenjin's knee, but even the complete kiln was not half of Zhenjin's height. Zhenjin looked down and immediately saw the bottom of the kiln, which was separated by a great bridge. The great bridge was a round mud brick, about 30 centimeters in diameter, and its thickness could not be seen clearly. The mud brick great bridge had clearly been dried, and there were small round holes evenly distributed on it. Zhenjin could imagine, once the kiln started operating, the dry firewood below would burn, and the flames would rise from these small round holes to the great bridge. Although the kiln was small and crude, once it was built, it would be far more stable than a bonfire, and the temperature of the flames would be higher, and its practical value would be greater. With this kiln we can make bricks and tiles, and in the beginning we can build a wooden house with tiles. When the kiln expands or even more, we can use the mud to make bricks, and then we can build a brick house. Sang-Soo continued to explain. Zhenjin could not help but praise, "Scholar Sang-Soo, is there anything you don't know?" Sang-Soo smiled and shook his head. "There is too much I don't know. Actually, I only learned this knowledge in recent years. I have long wanted to go to the wasteland continent, and I wanted to perfect my book. I studied a lot of information about the beasts, and this is actually their way of life. The beasts are much more backward than us humans, and most of them are still in the tribal era. In the vast wasteland continent there are very few beastly city-states. Then, is this mud enough?" Zhenjin pointed at the basket full of mud. Sang-Soo calculated for a moment. "It is more than enough to build the kiln, but I'm afraid it is not enough to make clay pots. I will have to trouble you, Lord Zhenjin, to make another trip." Sang-Soo naturally did not plan to make any bricks or tiles. After going through 2 teleportations, everyone knew that as long as the teleportation formation was there, the houses and camps built on this island would not have any practical value. The reason why they were making clay pots was because they needed containers to store water. Zhenjin, Sang-Soo, and ZD each had a water bag. However, the amount of water they had was far from enough to fill these water bags with water. They needed more water, and the more water they had, the safer it would be. The oasis was only a place to rest, and they still had to set out on their journey through the desert. They had a lot of water stored, and even if they did not have a new source of water, they would be able to last for a long time. This would allow them to resist greater risk. Zhenjin poured all the mud on the lakeside and left the clearing with the empty basket. He did not immediately go to the lakeside, but instead sprinkled a circle of medicine around the camp. He did not find any threats. For now, the oasis was still safe. However, it was better for Zhenjin to do something like going out. Whether it was ZD or Sang-Soo, it would be very difficult for them to defend against a sudden attack. When Zhenjin returned to the camp, ZD was already building the 3rd tent. The progress was so fast because this kind of private tent was too small. A few wooden sticks were used to build the frame, and then layers of natural palm leaves were draped over it. When people entered the tent, they could only lie down flat, and only cover their heads and feet. It was very difficult to even turn over on the spot. This kind of natural tent was like a small green coffin made of shoddy materials, and the space was very cramped. Seeing that it was Zhenjin who had returned, ZD was immediately relieved and began to work again. She half knelt on the ground, and her upper body went into the tent, as if she was adjusting the palm leaves inside. Her lower body was left outside, and her small brown leather boots were no longer covered by the magic robe. Because of her posture, the magic robe clung to her buttocks, outlining a moving curve. Seeing this scene, Zhenjin could not help but feel a little moved. Chapter 78. When he came to the open space again, Zhenjin found that Sang-Soo had already started to light the fire. The flames were burning at the bottom of the kiln. The kiln had been built and was being tempered by the flames. The water inside would evaporate, and because of the heat, the soil would undergo a certain degree of qualitative change, becoming dry and harder, and becoming more stable. Sang-soo looked at Jinjin. After the fire, if the kiln doesn't crack, then it's a success, and we can rely on it to make pottery. If it dries and cracks, then we'll have to make it again. But the possibility of that is not high, Sang-soo said as he began to make pottery. He first cleaned up the mud, taking away the grass, leaves, small stones, earthworms, and so on. Then he constantly kneaded and patted the mud ball to make the texture of the mud ball more uniform. Then, he separated a part of the mud ball and used his palm and fingers to pinch a plate. The edge of the plate rose vertically. Then, Sang-soo separated a small part of the mud ball and rolled this part of the mud ball on the stone slab, forming a long mud strip of roughly uniform thickness. Sang-soo put the cylindrical mud strip on the vertical edge of the chassis and gently squeezed with his fingers. Finally, the mud strip and the chassis were tightly integrated as one. After that, Sang-soo kept repeating the process. One by one, the mud strips were built on top of the chassis, and the height of the chassis was constantly changing, finally forming a shrunken pottery jar. The pottery jar was the size of an adult's head, pitch black, and looked very ugly. Sang-soo carefully lifted the pottery jar and placed it on another stone slab. Jinjin carefully noticed that whether it was the stone slab used for work or the stone slab on which the pottery jar was placed, Sang-soo had spread a layer of charcoal ash in advance. This was to prevent the bottom of the pottery jar from sticking to the stone slab. Sang-soo worked with the mud. His old hands and thin fingers looked very agile. His clothes and white fluffy beard were stained with mud, but the worn-out lenses were still spotless. Jinjin did not stay to help Sang-soo. He had a more important task. That was to patrol the oasis again. Jinjin had done a thorough investigation on the second day he arrived at the oasis. But that didn't mean that oasis wasn't dangerous. Wild beasts were allowed to move freely, and Jinjin's patrol area was limited. He could only try his best to avoid a single patrol route. Maybe if I mutated into a spear scorpion, I would be able to see further and hear more. However, this idea was rejected by the young knight as soon as it appeared in Jinjin's mind. He was very cautious about the core. He had made up his mind that he would not use this mysterious magic core unless it was absolutely necessary. Jinjin patrolled carefully and confirmed the safety of the oasis. Of course, Jinjin had no way to investigate the lake in the oasis. The lake water was cool and azure in color. When there was no wind, the lake water was as calm as a mirror, like a sapphire wrapped in the yellow desert, contrasting nicely with the blue sky. After lunch, they continued to work. The production of the clay pots had encountered a setback. Most of the clay pots had cracked after being fired in the kiln. It should be a lack of clinker. Sang-soo knew the reason, but there was nothing he could do. ZD couldn't provide any help in this regard. Fortunately, crushing the cracked clay pots into slag and merging the slag into the mud would increase the success rate of making new clay pot. Jinjin began to regret it. If he had known this would happen, he would have brought back all the water bags from the volcanic cave. Almost every member of the exploration team had a water bag, but when Jinjin left, he only picked up some weapons and took away the empty water bags. It was unrealistic to go back now. On one hand, it would consume food, time, and physical energy to go back and forth. On the other hand, the risk would greatly increase. Don't forget that the place was erupting. Whether it was bringing ZD and Sang-soo back or leaving them here, it was not a good choice. If bamboo grew here, it would be much more convenient. Jinjin thought of the bamboo forest that he had discovered and used when he was hunting yellow algae. The bamboo joint was a natural container, and it was quite convenient to store water. However, the shell of the coconut was also good. However, the coconut milk was rich in nutrients, so Jinjin and the others chose to keep it. They tried their best to drink boiling water. Towards evening, Jinjin returned to the camp again. ZD had already set up the 5 tents and was concocting potions. She told Zhenjin the good news. Baiya had woken up. Zhenjin came to Baiya's tent. Baiya was still very weak. He was lying in the tent with his head exposed. Seeing Zhenjin arrive, he wanted to get up, but he failed after several attempts. "Don't move, just lie down." Zhenjin could see that Baiya was still very weak, so he quickly stopped him and sat down beside him. "Lord Zhenjin, you have saved my life again. You are my savior, and I will repay your kindness even if I have to sacrifice my life," Baiya said emotionally. "Take care of your injuries, eat more and drink more. It was not easy for me to save you," Zhenjin said with a smile. Baiya's eyes were red and hot tears fell. He choked and said, "Lord Zhenjin, I know that you carried me all the way. You are a noble knight of the temple, but you risked your life for a lowly person like me. You also gave me precious water to drink. Lady Zd and Scholar Tsang Su have told me all this. Helping the weak and saving the good is the creed of the temple knights." Zhenjin smiled and put his hand on Baiya's shoulder to stop him from trying to get up again. "Although I do not ask for anything in return, I can understand and accept your desire to repay me. You have to live well and recover as soon as possible. Today, I was having a headache about the matter of adjusting the bow. I remember that you are an expert in this area, so I was waiting for you to help me. Sir, I can now." Baiya heard this and became even more anxious. He wanted to get up again, but Zhenjin gently pressed him to the ground, and he could not move at all. "Don't worry, listen to my orders." Zhenjin's face was serious. Baiya immediately stopped struggling and looked at Zhenjin with eyes full of worship and respect. "Sir, I will listen to you." Just as he was about to get up, Zhenjin suddenly remembered something. He took out a few letters from his bosom. "Oh, right. I will return these letters to you." We have read the contents of the letters. Originally, I thought that if you died, I would give these letters to Miss Sybil. But now that you are alive, I will return them to their rightful owner. Sir. Baiya suddenly felt a little embarrassed. Zhenjin smiled and patted Baiya's shoulder. "You have to work hard, live on, stand out, and don't disappoint the girl you love. When you are in a difficult situation and cannot persevere, think more. Imagine one day you become a knight, returning home with glory, and marrying Miss Sybil." "Yes." Baiya nodded and choked up again. His eyes were red and filled with tears again. At this moment, his entire person was radiating light, filled with hope for the future. Zhenjin was actually more inclined towards Tsang Su's opinion regarding Sybil's matter. But Zhenjin thought about it and did not remind Baiya. Firstly, he did not know the truth. Secondly, the current Baiya needed a positive encouragement, not a blow. Baiya was full of optimism, as if his entire person was bathed in the bright sunshine. Lan Zhao was also lying in a small tent made of palm leaves, exuding a gloomy and deathly stillness. He was on a hunger strike. Ever since Zhenjin and the others exposed the mirage in his heart, Lan Zhao could no longer face reality. He did not eat at all, nor did he drink a mouthful of water. Over the past few days, he had either been sleeping or curled up in a ball, crying silently. The contrast and change between the two made Zhenjin's head shake, and he sighed. Human nature is a very subtle and strange thing. When Baiya was alive, he was willing to risk his life to save Tsang Su. He did not want to die, not at all. When Lan Zhao was about to die, he was willing to sacrifice his own brother. But now, he does not want to live anymore and only wants to die. Zhenjin could not persuade Lan Zhao. He could not open his mouth, and he did not know how to persuade him. As long as he looked at Lan Zhao, he could tell how strong this person's will to die was. It seemed that the longer it stayed in this world, the longer it breathed, the more it was torturing the blue-green algae. This kind of torture made Zhenjin feel pity for Lan Zhao, and at the same time, it gave him a sense of pleasure that justice had been served. After all, seeing a wicked person get punished was something that made people clap their hands in joy. If a person really wanted to die, what could outsiders do? Night fell. A busy day had passed. The monotonous lizard meat and tasteless boiled water for dinner were praised by everyone. Beside the bonfire, everyone who was eating had a sincere and moved feeling from the bottom of their hearts. To be able to sit peacefully on the ground and eat until one's stomach was full, what a blissful thing this was. And to be able to sleep in a tent at night made this kind of happiness overflow from their hearts. They did not need to sleep on the ground in the open anymore. Although the tent was small, it was really warm. There was a layer of fluffy grass at the bottom of the tent, and there was also a temporary pillow. It was no longer a hard and cold ground. Even if the wind blew in at night, it was blocked by layers of palm leaf. The people inside would not be woken up by the cold. As for the space in the tent being too small and not being able to turn over, what turn over? Was the day's work not tiring enough? With such good conditions, you still can't satisfy them? Bah! Don't be ungrateful. When Jean of Needles and the others fell asleep in the tent, they were all smiling. Then, with smiles on their faces, they woke up on the fourth day after entering the oasis. Hiss! They all heard a strange sound. This sound was like thousands of snakes rolling over. The light of dawn tore through the darkness of the night, and everyone could see the truth. A large group of acid-green lizards was pouring into the oasis. Chapter 79. The acid-green lizards strode forward with their 4 thick legs, showing off their strong and powerful figures. Jean estimated that there were at least 300 green lizards in this batch. Among them, there were more than 30 dark iron lizards, more than 60 bronze lizards, and the rest were normal green lizards. After the lizards entered the oasis, they went on a rampage, sweeping everything away. Then, without stopping, they rushed into the lake as if they were sprinting. There were many lizards' footprints left by the lake, and there were also traces of their tails dragging on the ground. The surface of the lake was no longer calm, and there were sparkling waves. The dark green and emerald scales of the lizards were washed clean, and there was no more dust from the desert. Some of the dark iron and bronze lizards began to have fun. They dove into the lake, strode forward, swung their tails, and swam in the lake. After swimming for a while, they swam up again and breathed in the foggy air through their nostrils. Most of the lizards stood in the shallow water, lowering their heads and opening their mouths to drink water. These lizards are hungry and thirsty. Zidi's eyes were filled with worry. Hungry beasts were full of aggression. Beside her stood Jean and Sang-Soo with serious expressions. Baiyu rushed over. After a good night's sleep, he finally had the strength to move. When he heard the movements of the lizards, he could no longer hold back and walked over with difficulty. After rushing to Jin's side, he bent over and sat on the ground with his hands on the ground. He panted heavily as he looked at the lizards in the distance. Baiyu's face was very pale, and he said intermittently, "The lizards are here. Huff, huff, will the scorpions come?" His broken bones still needed a long time to heal, and he could not compare to Jin's recovery ability. However, as time passed, the 4 people who were observing the movements of the lizards gradually relaxed. The appearance of the beast horde in the oasis was already within everyone's expectations. After all, they had deduced that there was a large water source nearby based on the beast horde. Another reason for the group to relax was that the lizards were all playing around by the lake. They rarely came out and wandered around the oasis to look for food. When Jean was building this temporary camp, he had already considered the possibility of the beasts drinking water. Therefore, the location of the temporary camp was quite good. Jin's eyes flickered. In his opinion, these lizards were food. Looking at their robust bodies, weren't they just moving piles of dried meat? These lizards are still drinking water. They can actually hold so much water. How terrifying! Baiyu exclaimed after watching for a while. The lizards were still yelling loudly. Among them, the bronze-ranked and iron-ranked lizards were still in the lake. They opened their mouths wide, allowing the lake water to pour into their wide throat. Sang-Soo muttered, "That's because this kind of acid lizard has 3 stomachs, one of which is used to digest food. The other 2 auxiliary stomachs were used to store water. They are natural giant water bags. With their physique, they need a lot of water to move around. Don't forget, they can also spray acid. To produce this kind of acid in the body, they need a lot of water to participate." Sang-Soo had dissected a green-skinned lizard before, so he had a good understanding of this kind of beast. "Maybe we can put these lizards' stomachs into water bags?" ZD suddenly suggested. Of course, she knew that the progress of making clay pots was very slow. Sang-Soo thought for a while. "We can try." Everyone discussed for a while and decided that Jinjin would secretly hunt these lizards. ZD and Sang-Soo continued with their unfinished work. Baiyu was still very weak, so he still focused on recuperating. However, Baiyu insisted on working. Jinjin saw the young man's eager eyes and gave him the job of making the hemp rope. Carrying an iron saber and an iron sword on his back, Jinjin left the temporary camp. Climbing up a slanted coconut tree that was relatively easy to climb, Jinjin had a wide field of vision and carefully investigated. He didn't find any lizards around the camp. Jinjin climbed down the tree and slowly approached the lizards by the lake. The lizards were more concentrated, which made the temporary camp safer. However, it also made it more difficult for Jinjin to hunt. Jinjin didn't want to act rashly and anger the whole group of beasts, causing them to chase after him. The nature of beasts was hard to predict. If Jinjin fell into the group of beasts, he would also be in danger. If Sang-Soo, ZD, Baiya, and Lan Zhao were affected, it would be even more dangerous. Although Jinjin could turn into a silver spear scorpion, the group of lizards was very large, far larger than the group they encountered in the Golden Stones. In addition, Jinjin didn't plan to use his heart core. There were many reasons. The first reason was that the sudden appearance of a silver spear scorpion was very suspicious. Sang-Soo and ZD were very smart. The more Jinjin deceived them, the more likely he would be exposed. The second reason was that Jinjin was very wary of the heart core. The heart core absorbed the blood of other life forms. This kind of transformation was very cruel and evil. As a temple knight, Jinjin had a natural repulsion and loathing towards this kind of thing. The third reason was that Jinjin was also very worried. He couldn't understand the nature of the heart core and was worried about the possible hidden dangers. His intuition told him that the more he used the heart core, the more likely he would walk in the opposite direction of the knight's path. Jinjin was not anxious. His young and handsome face didn't have a trace of childishness, but was filled with a reliable and steady temperament. Countless times of suffering and despair had tempered his body and mind. Jinjin decided to take a look first, and wait for the opportunity to hunt. "Croak, croak, croak, what's that sound?" Jinjin revealed a puzzled look. After waiting for about an hour, he heard a strange sound coming from the lake. The sound was very similar to the croaking of frogs, but if one listened carefully, they would realize that this sound was even more muffled. Jinjin looked over, but didn't find any frogs, but at this time, the lizards were acting strangely. A large number of lizards rushed into the lake, moving their limbs and swimming quickly. They opened their mouths and started fighting in the water, causing waves to splash. There were also lizards that raised their heads and shot out acid. The acid shot into the air, and suddenly hit a transparent existence. Under the influence of the green acid, the transparent beast revealed its true appearance. It was a type of fish, like a pufferfish that swelled up after encountering an enemy. It was white and fat like a ball, floating in the air, relying on its light yellow tail and fins to swim. Their bodies had sharp black fish bones, and it was them that made the croaking sound. After being corroded by the acid, these fat ball flying fish fell into the lake. The surrounding lizards swarmed over, fighting with each other, and quickly ate the fat ball flying fish. What's going on? Sang-soo and ZD were attracted by this strange phenomenon. These fat ball flying fish were hiding in the depths of the lake, and now they've been provoked by the lizard. Zhen guessed. Strange, we can't see these fat ball flying fish with our naked eyes, but we can see the lizards clearly. ZD frowned slightly. Sang-soo's eyes flashed with a thoughtful light. I think I know the reason for this. These acid green lizards have the same visual system as many snakes. What they see is formed by their own heat, and the higher the heat, the more it attracts the attention of these acid green lizards. These fat ball flying fish, let's call them that for now, more or less have heat. We can't see them with our naked eyes, probably because their skin has a camouflage effect similar to that of chameleons. The fat ball flying fish were being hunted by the lizards in large numbers. They escaped from the water and slowly floated up into the air. However, the lizards could shoot acid, and they shot them down one by one. Zhen noticed that these fat ball flying fish also had a way to counterattack. Some of them would explode, and a ball of hot water would burst out. The black fish bones on the surface of their bodies would shoot out in all directions with the explosion. The fish bones were obviously poisonous, and after piercing the lizards, Zhen could see that the wounds immediately turned black. The flesh and scales on the black wounds were rapidly rotting. The wounds were originally small, but in a few breaths, they quickly expanded to the size of a bowl. However, the lizards had a countermeasure against this. When they saw their companions that had been hit by fish bones, the surrounding lizards would surround them and cover the black wounds with their mouths and suck hard. The terrifying black poison would be sucked into the poison glands in the lizard's mouth. Then, the lizards would open their mouths to shoot out poison. The originally green acid would turn dark green because of the black poison, and its power would increase greatly. Sang-soo's eyes flashed with a bright light as he thought of the results of dissecting lizards. He suddenly realized, the lizards' mouths are hidden in their mouths to shoot out poison glands. When the muscles of these spouts expand, they can suck in liquid from the outside. Sucking in the poison is equivalent to detoxifying the other lizard. So this organ has such a wonderful use. The acid green lizards had been bullied badly by the scorpions, and many of them had been slaughtered by the exploration team. However, they were now on a killing spree. They were very effective against the fat ball flying fish. It seems like these fat ball flying fish are the lizard's staple food, ZD guessed. Gua gua gua. Gua gua gua. After watching the battle for a while, the fat ball flying fish's cries became more frequent and louder. The expressions of Zhen and the others gradually changed. More and more fat ball flying fish appeared in the battle, and their numbers were increasing at a terrifying speed. This was only what they could see with their naked eyes. There were many more that they could not see. There were too many fat ball flying fish. They quickly gained the advantage in numbers and surrounded the lizard. After the lizards ate and drank large amounts of water, their aggressiveness was greatly reduced. The fat ball flying fish's counterattack became stronger and stronger, and the lizards turned around and retreated. The pitch-black poisonous fish bones flew out continuously. Many lizards that were hit by the fish bones after their companions stopped in their tracks to let them absorb the poison. In the end, they were pierced by the fish bones all over their bodies. In a dozen breaths' time, these lizards turned into puddles of black water. They diluted in the vast lake and quickly disappeared without a trace. You're tuning into the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.